show that we met in executive session to consider matter leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or persons, and collective negotiations. And we're going to begin with our student recognition, my favorite part of being on the board.
Great.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to start with our student recognition. Dr. Gerizzo is going to announce the student's name, and then we're going to ask you to come up when you hear your name.
Thank you. And we're going to start with a single candidate for all PEAK. Okay, so the PEAK Festival provides opportunities for talented fourth graders to participate in discovering the elements of music through the creative process of project-based performance. This year, Jacqueline Mordhorst participated in various workshops which were facilitated by talented music professionals. We commend Jacqueline for her participation and her commitment to developing her musicianship. And Dahlia, why don't you come up and join us, please? Mrs. Rodriguez is our Director of Fine and Performing Arts, so you can help us give these out, okay?
Jacqueline,
So come on up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Here we go.
And we have so we have our pens and we have our certificates tonight. Okay, very good. All right. So our next part of the evening is celebrating our all-county musicians. Now there were so many all-county musicians over the course of the district that we're splitting this into 3 evenings because there are so many of you. It is really impressive to lead a program where the fine and performing arts play such a pronounced role in what we do. There is so much to the reading and the writing and math that we do, and the work that we do in performance, visual and performing arts, particularly in performance arts, really sets North Shore apart from other places. So I thank all of you for being here tonight, and I'm really proud of you. And we will have opportunities for you to come back and show us what you're made of, and you can sing for us, okay? So each year, the Nassau Music Educators Association hosts the All-County Music Festival. Top-performing students from all schools in Nassau County are nominated based on students' solo performances at NYSSMA Solo Festival last spring and by their music teacher's recommendation. The large performing ensemble consists of 300 students representing the different school districts across the county. North Shore's elementary students demonstrated their commitment to music by attending rehearsals during the school week and by their exceptional performance at the Tillis Center. So we're going to read your name, and so as you come up, please, we'll give you your certificate and your pen, and then we'll hang on to you, and you can take I'm sure your parents are going to want a little photo of you, okay? So, Benito Di Giuseppe. Thank you. Okay. Connor Finnegan. And just so you know, this is the band. These are our band. You're welcome. Darren Friedland. Allison Friedman. Seamus Hughes. Erica Judd. Maria Peticios. Did I get that right? Arian Gira. And for our chorus, Olivia Palaco. Violet Frankopoulos. Juliana Gaita. Eva Gibstein. Samantha Glass. Ileana Gonzalez Alizi. Fallon Zettner. Gianna Leno. Paul Panagos. Wyatt Snyder. Ginger Sanborn. Sylvie Ward. Lastly, Caroline Winchester. Thank you. For our orchestra, Alec Bagdazarian. Welcome. Malin Tapatenko. Kenneth Hahn.
Congratulations.
Jasmine Coe. Jordan Lewis. Grace Ryan. Thank you so much.
All right.
Wait. The young lady in the front, I think it was a Greek name. Come on up. I think the parents missed the opportunity to have a picture taken.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Joanna. Wait, Dr. Drizzo. Another judge.
One more.
Anybody else? I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to our business meeting. I'm sure you're all excited to be here. And then the mass exodus begins. Okay. You're welcome. All that we ask is that if you could just keep moving out so we can start our business. I mean, you could stay. We'd love you all to stay, but if you don't want to. Okay. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes. Am I forgetting anything? No? Motion. Approval of the minutes, January 11th. Could I have a motion? Mr. Mortimer.
Night, Eric.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Or actually, any comments or questions? No, all in favor? I think we had some people who were absent for that January 11th. Yeah, it's okay?
Council has said they can still vote.
They can still vote on it. Okay, so the January 11 minutes, all in favor? Okay. Marianne, are you abstaining?
Are you abstaining, Marion? Yes.
Okay. You got that, Betty? Okay. Let's move on to the approval of the treasurer's report. Could I have a motion? And a second?
Second.
I have it. Any comments or questions? No? All in favor? Okay, let's move to the report of the superintendent. You want to wait till they get up, or we'll shut the door? Yeah, we can shut the door.
you know. I was just looking at those chairs there and saying,
Yeah, they're still doing it. We start. So, I thought you were going to go. I wouldn't know that. They're very nice.
Okay, great. Okay. Just wait one little minute.
Okay.
Okay, we're all set?
Yep. All right, so
All
let's begin.
All set. So thank you so much. That's always a lot of fun. Congratulations to our student musicians. So for those of you who are musicians, and maybe some of you who are not musicians, like myself, would know that being selected to the all-county chorus or band or orchestra at any level is really quite an accomplishment. So it's pretty exciting. Just to let the board know, over the past several weeks, our work in the district has been primarily focused on developing the 2018-19 budget and also involved in our comprehensive review of our probationary non-tenured staff. In tonight's budget review, I'll speak specifically about the status of the revenue side of the budget, as well as what we know thus far about the status of the tax cap. As you know, I plan to present the preliminary budget on February 8th, and then we'll begin our line-by-line analysis that night as well. I do see a couple of our Legislative Action Committee folks here tonight, so I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much for putting together an informative and really excellent legislative night. And I do extend our thanks to our legislators for their attendance. In addition, I wanted to welcome Albert Cousins and Carrie Titone, our new teacher leader for AP and IB, Linda Binion, who are here with us tonight. Since last spring, I've had many conversations about the extent to which the advanced placement and the international baccalaureate programs could coexist with one another here in North Shore. And over the course of these past 3 months, I'm really pleased with the level of analysis and synthesis that's taken place. The benefits of both programs are strong, and I'm pleased with how the IB has provided a strong framework for teaching, for learning, and for assessment in our schools. The strength of the program really lies within the learner profile, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. I absolutely consider them to be undeniable prerequisites for life beyond high school, regardless of whether you're taking an advanced placement class, a Regents level class, an international baccalaureate level class. They are undeniable. So that said, we also do understand the importance of advanced placement courses and the unmistakable value that they add to the total school program. What you'll see tonight is that a student in North Shore may take a full complement of advanced placement, international baccalaureate, or any combination of both with Regents level classes as well. The analysis that will be presented to you tonight reflects the fact that customization of scheduling is possible, and accessibility to high-level coursework is absolutely plentiful. So that said, we do wish to have our overall message be one of balance and wellness. So there are, when we counted, 38 opportunities for advanced placement or IB classes. And if you wanted to do so, you could take 12 AP exams in the course of your career here. I think that is a rare student who, could and should be doing that. but we want to make sure that our program is accessible to all. That said, each student will benefit from a comprehensive discussion with their counselor, their teachers, their parents, to ensure that their program is appropriately rigorous, that it is balanced, that it affords to them and for them an enjoyable high school experience, a manageable high school experience, and one that positions them well for what lies beyond them at North Shore High School and in the post-secondary world. So I'm anxious for you to hear the report, and I'm very excited about what lies ahead. A note of good news, I'm very pleased to report that North Shore High School has been named one of only 155 schools, not high school, schools, in the entire state as a reward school for high performance. Really notable accomplishment, and I thank the high school administration and the teachers for the good work that they've done to get there. An update on Littleworth Lane. The Joint Committee met again today. We spent time talking about the charges of each of our 3 subcommittees, and we'll meet again in a few weeks after we've had time to talk about in our subcommittees what the next steps are for each of those groups. The committee is looking at signage and short-term solutions, issues regarding education and traffic safety for our students and for our parents, and then also long-term solutions regarding accessibility and the times at which that road is open and not. We're making good progress. We still have a little bit of a ways to go. This was only our 2nd meeting, and I'll continue to keep working with the committee, and then I continue my regular communications with Mayor Lieberman. The 18-19 calendar, we get calls every day on the 2018-19 calendar. We definitely hear you. It is in the final stage of development, the calendar. It's coming. Just so you know, the New York State, better? Thank you. So New York State changed the way in which the hours of the minimum daily and weekly hours are calculated to count for state aid. So for those of you who don't know how the calendar game works, you must have 180 days. You may use 2 superintendent's conference days to count towards those 180 days. So really, teachers in front of students, you really need 178 days. And then there's a day called Rating Day, which is complicating the calendar a little bit for us this year because Rating Day is set for June 26th of next year. That is the last day that school can be in session for children. And there are Regents exams on the Tuesday, the day before. That normally happens on a Friday. So it elongates the calendar a little bit, which is good, and that it gives us a little bit of flexibility with days and getting in that the Thanksgiving holiday and all the other holidays that we have available to us. But it does extend the school year a little bit longer than it normally does. But we do have a calendar that is in the final stages of development, and we'll be bringing that to the board on February 8th. Okay? And lastly, if you have not seen it yet, we have a Facebook page for the district. It's the North Shore Schools. The name of it was Shelley North Shore Schools, because Shelley Newman, no, I know, but it's her birthday, yes. So we do have a district Facebook page. We've already got like 55 people who have liked it, so go on there and follow it, like it. We'll be linking it to my Twitter account, and we hope that it'll be a place where we can get good information out for the community at large. And that is all. Okay, so I thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it doesn't look like we have our SGO tonight. They must be home studying for middle school, for midterms? They're at the high school. No, I'm sure they're studying for midterms. So we'll move on to the regular business, and we'll do our update on budget development.
Great. So the budget process is continuing to move along. The way the expense side works is that there is a maximum allowable levy that gets set as it relates to the CPI. The CPI this year, the Consumer Price Index, is 2.13%. And then when you add in the exceptions to the formula, North Shore's maximum levy amount is 2.24%. That is what we are allowed to levy with it for a simple majority. And so we're still working on the expense side of the budget, so I don't have those numbers to release tonight, but I can talk with you about where we are by way of revenues. So we have a sum total thus far of $18,781,973 in revenue that are coming into the district. That is absent the taxes. Where that money is coming from are, and these are fairly hard numbers at this point, so we have about $150,000 in revenue that comes from split properties. Those are properties that are, the property may rest in both the North Shore District and, let's say, the Glen Cove District, and when that happens, the homeowner has a choice about where they want to send their child to school, and we then bill back the Glen Cove schools for that tuition. So that brings in about $150,000 worth of revenue for us. There's the 2 peaking stations related to LIPA and the pilots. That's roughly $1,775,000 in revenue, an increase of $56,000 from last year. We have the business pilot, the IDAs, that's $32,000. And then we have the former Lilco properties, the pilots. That number is roughly $6.9 million. So that's up about $343,000 from last year. The governor released, if you were watching the news, the governor released his budget about a week and a half ago. And in that budget, he releases all of his state aid runs for districts, and North Shore was included in that. Unfortunately, our state aid is down from last year. So when you look at the form, it looks like state aid is up by $153,000, but that number is actually, when you look at what it really represents, it's actually down by $107,000 from last year to this year, and that's a result of building aid. So projects that were not completed, and then they did not find their way into the building aid component of the budget. So what we do know is what typically happens in the state aid process is that the governor releases state aid, then the assembly releases state aid, and the Senate releases state aid, and then at some point in time, all of those 3 come together, and there is a final set of numbers that gets released with when the budget is approved by the legislature. That by law has to happen by April 1st, with the exception of 1 year, which I think was last year. All of the governor's budgets were on time, and we were able, and that number has always gone up. So we will, it's hard for us to estimate how high it will go up or not. So from this point forward, by way of estimation, we use the governor's runs, and then to the extent that we have known information that they go up, we adjust that revenue line accordingly. Otherwise, we leave it where it is. We have tuition coming in from special ed related services of $100,000. We have adult ed, which brings in about $35,000 of revenue, but we also offset that on the expense side. There is $350,000 in revenue that will come from St. Christopher's. And then we have $145,000 in interest on investments. We have $450,000 that comes in from miscellaneous receipts. And then we bring in money from fund balance and reserves. So we are right now currently planning to bring in $1.2 million in appropriated fund balance from this budget into next budget. So we'll be returning that money to the taxpayers. We'll be using $800,000 of the Marcelino Levine reserve. So that has that peaked at $1 million last year, and now we need to start bringing that down. And there's a plan for, and we'll talk with the board about this through the course of the budget. We have about a 10 or 12 year, I think it's 12-year use, about 11 of those reserves. So what we want to be able to do when we use reserves is, as we allocate them, we reach a crescendo and then we start to bring them down. So over the course of time, we bring that down ever so gently. So when that money is gone, the budget does not feel a major hit in a revenue source. And then there was money in the tax certiorari reserve that was allocated that had to go into unrestricted, and we're going to start to use that reserve money as well. So there's $350,000 of that we're planning to start using. And then $1.2 million from the Employee Retirement System reserve. So altogether, when you put all that together, it's about just shy of $18.8 million that comes in as additional revenue sources that is not taxes. And then, so when the expense budget gets put together, we marry those two, and that the gap is where the levy comes from. Okay, so that's where we are. We have reworked the entire budget book this year, so you will have much more information that will be posted to our website, and folks will be able to have lots of information about all the specific lines of the budget, philosophy behind the budget. Each of our administrators has built narratives around their budget requests, so anybody who reads the documents and particularly the board will have a sense of how and why we are building our spending plan and what it supports, and how it is good for kids. So that's where we are. You'll get much more. You'll have much more information this week, but it changes almost by the hour as we're working things through. But we are definitely in a place now where I can confidently say that the levy that we are proposing will be lower than the allowable tax cap. So we are working hard to bring forward a very responsible spending plan. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Do you want to open that to the board for questions?
I'm happy to do that. Sure.
So why don't we open this up, see if the board has questions, and then we're going to move to the update on APIB, and then we'll have comments from the public. But we're going to start with the board. Dave.
Just a quick one. Peter, you said that state aid was down by 107 in this current iteration. What is that number? Just I'm tallying up here. I want to.
Sure. So the 17-18 state aid number was $5,331,389, and the proposed 18-19 state aid number is $5,224,136.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I, Tony?
Yes.
So I was interested in that same line too, which is the number we've been waiting on. And if you look in Newsday or a couple of different sources, really, it shows their state aid's going to increase. Not tremendously by any stretch, $60,000, $70,000.
It was like 153 was what the run said.
So, right, the state aid run, Newsday reported differently because they wanted to carve out certain numbers.
Right.
But we have, by our estimation, a drop in state aid, which you said was tied to building aid. Could we talk
Sure.
more about exactly what that is?
Olivia, can you speak very specifically to that, please?
What happens with building aid is that once we sign the construction contract, we send forms to the state, and that is included in the executive budget. If the construction is delayed, which happened right here at the middle school, because when we're replacing the windows, which was the biggest part of our bond work.
Olivia, just take your mic and turn it up a little bit,
Okay.
please.
Which was the biggest part of the bond work. Is that okay? Yeah. Which is the biggest part of it. It went 2 years. So they included it in the 17-18 estimates. What happened this year is that because the construction project were delayed, they went back and reduced last year's base. The $5,331,000 that Peter is talking about was reduced to $5,070,000. So the base was reduced. So when you compare it to the estimate for this year, it looks like it's more, but really it's not.
Okay, well, that's,
Confusing.
well, and depressing, right? That you hit like a delay you can't Dodge with construction and
Sometimes with state aid, it gets complicated with some of the expense-based aid. So we have aid that comes in through technology or aid that comes in through BOCES, and so that aid is a result of money that you spend, right? And so if you don't spend as much as as you had initially anticipated, when your aid comes back on that, it's not as high
And
as.
this is just related to the buildings.
And this is related to the buildings.
Same thing. Sarah,
Right.
one more.
so I was going to say, like, prior to that information, to me, it looked like we were going to get this slight increase in state aid, like, you know, most 100,000, whereas we knew that the state was simultaneously giving us 1.2 million in increases in pension and healthcare costs, and it seemed sort of absurd, and now more so.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move on to our presentation.
Sure. So I'd like to welcome Albert Cousins and Carrie Titone. You might be better off on the other side.
You're going to have to use the mic.
Yeah, so just take this.
Plus they take, take this off.
How do I do that? Just. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is this volume acceptable? Are we? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight to hear. I think this is my 11th or 12th presentation on the topic of IB. This one is different in that we are going to be talking less about what the program is and more about the offerings that we are providing to our students at the most advanced levels. So we're going to be sharing with you the result of a lot of thinking that we did around ensuring that students at our school can make choices that are in their best interest and also in their desires, so that I'm hoping that you see tonight that there's a fully customizable route, like Dr. Giarrizzo said at the start of the meeting, and it's one that will really suit our students well, as long as we do what's most critical, which is to rely on the expertise of the individual students' families and counselor in making those choices. So I'm going to be presenting lots of things, but I want us all to be mindful that we're talking about advanced placement courses and IB courses, both of which are very challenging. And so when you hear this presentation, there's so much more to our school than just individual courses. And there are many, many, many courses that you won't even hear me speaking about tonight that are quality, enriching courses at different levels. So I preface it with that just because the presentation is very much focused on a certain level of course, and we have so much more to our school. So I just want to make sure that we're all aware of that as I'm presenting. The first slide is just a refresher for all of us about the district values, and in this slide I reference the committed individuals. One thing that how we arrived at this point in terms of the array of programs we have at our high school is when I began, I'm now in my 10th year as principal of the high school, many students we saw, especially in the counseling office, were having senior year schedules that weren't necessarily preparing them in the same way in a consistent manner. There were some students who were leaving with very inspired, intriguing opportunities, but there are many students who were crafting schedules that were very light and resulting in a lot of unscheduled time, and we were hearing a lot about a major transition gap when it went to colleges and universities in terms of the level of preparation, not only academically, but also in terms of managing the workload and the expectations. So we really looked at finding something that would help us develop a more rigorous program while fulfilling the district goals of making sure the students were reflective and thoughtful about those choices. And so you can see our students now are working harder than they've ever worked. They are performing better than they've ever performed. I know that Dr. Giarrizzo mentioned the reward school for high performance, and that's all referenced in these standardized tests, which are only one part of the equation. Much of what we do is looking at to what extent the students are developing these traits. And I think some of them we do a better job than others, and I will be talking about them throughout the presentation. But the learner profile of the International Baccalaureate, those are all the characteristics listed starting with thinkers and through the blue. Those are all the principles that every single class in our school is geared toward. So that has nothing to do with a program or individual course. That's what is at the fiber of our school. We do want students to think, we want them to communicate, and what we ask them to produce is geared toward that. And they're doing very demanding, intellectually stimulating, creative tasks as a result of their courses, both in the advanced placement and in the IB courses. So tonight we're going to be showing you, we're going to start with some vocabulary that's essential for understanding our presentation, and that will be describing the nature of an advanced placement course, the nature of an IB course, what we're going to be calling a co-seated course, and also the IB courses that would allow students to, if they opt to, take AP exams. So I'm going to let, this is Dr. Carrie Titone. She's been with us for 14 days, and this is her first public appearance. So I'm sure you'll all give her a warm welcome when I introduce Carrie, and she's going to talk to us about the 4 different course options you'll be hearing about tonight.
Okay, so the first level of courses that we're listing up here are advanced placement courses. So advanced placement courses are created by the College Board, and they're essentially a series of exams. And so these are exams that students could sit for in May of their junior or senior year. And they are, holistically, you could say, summative assessments. There is nothing internal that is going on that directs the score of the student on the exam in May. In a course, the course is very rigorous. They are guided in their assessments, which are predominantly multiple choice. There are timed assessments, but there are also written-based assessments, and each course is different, whether you're talking about a world language course, science, English, math. In every subject area, they're different. But overall, you would see multiple choice. You could see rigorous assessments for the students. You could see timed assessments for the students. In AP courses, teachers are informed in their instruction by attending seminars, perhaps, but those seminars are not required for the teachers to teach the course. Instead, we go through a syllabus review, which is submitted to the College Board. The next category of exams up here, or the courses up here, are International Baccalaureate. So International Baccalaureate exams and courses and diploma all exist in their different capacities. At North Shore, we offer the IB Diploma, and in that set of exams, you would see 6 assessments at least. You would also see the Creativity, Action, and Service. You would see Extended Essay, and you would also see a Theory of Knowledge course. Those are all guided by the approaches to teaching and learning, and at the core of that is the IB Learner Profile. So when we talk about a program, those are all threaded together through the IB Learner Profile. Again, those are rigorous courses, but the assessments are different from the AP. In IB courses, you would see exams that take place internally, that are graded by the teachers, and then submitted externally. You will also see some multiple choice. You could also see some writing, and you would also see assessments that are then externally moderated. So there are a series of assessments that could take place over a much longer period of time, enabling for growth and development for the students over a longer period of time. Again, that's different from course to course. However, it does not come down to one day in May, as exams have already begun, assessments have already begun as early as September. In an AP IB co-seated course, those would be courses that naturally are guided by College Board and IBO, such that they are so homogeneous that you could offer a curriculum to students that could successfully prepare them for both assessments at the end of the school year. Again, the assessment could be driven by the IB or College Board. However, we would want to offer a course that is homogeneous in both. And we would only want to offer courses that are AP IB co-seated for courses that naturally are guided by the same values. In an IB course with an AP exam option, the course would be guided by the IB Learner Profile, the approaches to teaching and learning that are prescribed by IB. However, at the end of the school year, we would want to prepare students for What we acknowledge is that they want to sit for an AP exam in a related course, and so we would be able to prepare them by offering review sessions and perhaps preparation exams to practice.
Thank you. So the next slide is going to show a series of recommendations that we are presenting to the board based on the discussion that took place at the December meeting. So I'm going to share with you this series of recommendations. The first of which is more explicitly and purposefully attending to the advanced placement. Now what that means is we have taken in the past 2 years a philosophy of allowing it. We would order the exam for students. In our mindset now, we are looking for opportunities to explicitly attend to the students whose goals it is to engage in those assessments. So I'll be showing you a roadmap or a pathway which a student could take as many AP exams as they wanted. We offer 22. They could take with a class that would prepare them 12 to 14 in the course of their career. And again, just because they can, that doesn't mean they should. But we are looking at very specific ways in which students will be prepared to be successful on those assessments if that's their choice. So that's number one, is that it's a little bit of a mindset shift in terms of where we're drawing our resources and attention to. The second one is most of the areas of adjustment are being made in the sciences. In particular, it is because the science courses, the way that our students are selecting, some students, most of them take biology in 8th grade, many of them take IB biology for 2 years in high school, so that's 3 years of biology in 5 years of school. We want as many students as possible, if not all, to make sure that there's an opportunity for physics. So you will see that some of our choices are all geared toward ensuring that our students have a well-rounded science experience. It's also because we want to make sure students can complete a highly rigorous science course within a given year. And because the IB courses are a 2-year pathway, we want to ensure that if a student chooses, they can have a college-level science course completed in 1 year and take a different one in their senior year. So you will see here that the co-seated courses have biology, chemistry, computer science, and the world languages. This means students in that class will be able to take the AP exam and do well on that exam. That means that these courses are so aligned that they will do well. And we do have data, by the way, to support this, because in some cases we've had already 2 cohorts of students who've taken and performed on these exams, and the teachers of these courses, I want you to know, were AP teachers, so they are very versed in students being successful on these, and they are a part of this discussion and this process to make sure that that is possible. We are going to be restoring a freestanding AP Physics. The math basis in physics is very unique to different levels. The AP has several assessments in physics. IB, the course is 2 years. We want students to be able to take both physics in the year, and they could take AP Bio. So you could take AP Physics, AP Bio, 11th and 12th grade, and have a very well-rounded science experience. That could perhaps, if depending on the grade, depending on the institution, award you credit in college, but that is we felt that there was enough difference between the IB Physics and the AP Physics that it warranted a restoration of a pure AP Physics course. The AP exam option and support for AP US History and AP English, this was a point of English Comp. This was a point of much discussion. I've had many conversations with many people, some of in this room, about these exams. There's a real strength to the quality of the courses in the humanities within the IB program. That being said, for any student who would like to be able to do well on these AP assessments, they would certainly be supported and they would be able to do that. We are going to identify them and we'll know who they are throughout the course of the year so that they can be supported. So now these are the only courses that would be an IB course that has an AP exam option. Each of the other courses at the advanced level would either be preparing them for the AP if they choose to, or be an explicit AP course. And I'll be showing you a kind of a summary of all of this so it makes a little bit more sense. And the inclusion of 18 AP courses and 20 IB courses. So those are the courses that, those are what we would offer. That we offer more AP exams than courses. So you can see there's 22 AP exams and 18 IB exams. And that is because some of the IB courses, 2 years, you could take 1 year of the course or 2. So like English, for example, was 2 years. You could just take 1 year of IB English and then take a year of AP English. And you will see all of that illustrated in the slides that follow. And then the final bullet is probably the most important, and I apologize if I'm standing in front of the slide, and that is further enhancing the individualized programming with the counselor in terms of helping students navigate the choices for them and which courses would allow them to meet their goals. So that is also a mindset shift in terms of that, but I cannot overstate the importance of individual counseling with a student and a family about the program that is the best fit for them. Currently, we have more students than ever taking the most rigorous program, and I want to caution us about that. I understand that being in the most rigorous program is the best thing you can do in terms of college applications, but it's not the best thing you can do if it's not the right choice for your child. And I want to say that because the percentages of students taking the most demanding courses in our school has mushroomed to epic proportions. And while I love that, I can tell you our students are more stressed than they've ever been. And I speak to many students, and they are overwhelmed by all of the work that is being done. Some are more ready than others, and it's okay to have a mixture. And I'll be showing you slides to illustrate that as well. Okay, this slide here, it shows all of the advanced placement available at our school. Everything on the left-hand column, starting with AP World History, U.S. Government, all the way down. Those are all freestanding. Those are AP course. We have an AP audit on board, on College Board, syllabus approved. Everything that's in the green are the fully co-seated. So AP Biology, AP Chemistry. And one question that you may have is on the transcript, it will be listed as an AP IB course for biology, for example, so that the colleges will know that the curriculum is an AP curriculum, if that's what the child chooses to do. And then in the following year, if they continue on the AP track, the transcript will show that consistency. What we never want is a student going from AP or IB and moving down a level in their senior year, because it's important to show that trend and that progression over time. And the courses at the bottom here are AP IB courses that have an AP exam option. And really, the two most common would be the history and government and the English language and composition. Some students, we do actually have some seniors now who took 2 years of IB. They're choosing to take AP Comp in senior year just so they could get college credit. There are many times that you could take the AP Comp, and we always support any student taking any AP. You may also be surprised that we have 16 exams that we're ordering for classes that we've never taught, that students bought a Barron's Review book for because they like to take AP tests, and we order those for them, and they'll take them. Courses that we've never had in our catalog ever. These are all of the IB courses that we offer at a high school. You can see I listed them. They're really one course over 2 years. So like IB Language and Literature 1, that means it's in junior year. 2 is senior year, and so these are all of the courses that we offer in the IB program. So these two slides show all of the offerings in both. Each one of them has courses in every discipline, including the arts. So we have advanced placement art, we have IB art, same with math, science, English, and social studies. If you want to get closer on the next slide because the type is small, you're more than welcome. This shows at each grade level all that is available to students at the higher level. This is a pretty overwhelming slide when you consider the perspective of a 15-year-old or 14-year-old sitting with their counselor worrying about are they going to make the right or wrong choice for them. But what I hope that you're able to see is that there are options for any student to find the most advanced courses that's going to best fit their goals. So I'm going to show you options for a student who wants to take predominantly AP courses, and then I'll do the same for IB, and then I'll show you some samples of both of them. So this is a student who is actually having a somewhat less rigorous program than some of our seniors have now, who are taking, classes every single period of the day, no lunch, classes before school. So this is a student who is going through high school with a predominant AP focus. They will graduate from our school with 12 AP exams and 1 IB exam. This particular student could very easily, he or she could add on, a psychology if they wanted to, or even the computer science if they would choose to. So this is showing a real basic program with an AP focus. So there are selections in each department over the course of 4 years. These are the exams that they would graduate with. So this student would have 1 IB exam, and that IB exam would be in math in 11th grade. So they'd be taking the Math SL, which is the course that prepares them for AP Calculus, and so that would be the only IB exam that they would sit for. They could then go through their entire high school experience just sitting for the AP exams, minus the 1 AP exam in 11th grade math. And this is what a diploma program student's schedule could look like. And you will see this student would have the option, and by the way, the board, I did update the numbers, I had miscounted, so there's 1 more exam here. There are 6 IB exams, that's part of the diploma program. You take an exam in 1 of each of the 6 courses required by IB for the diploma program, and you could take up to 8 AP exams. You also have the IB core responsibilities, which is a whole additional responsibility for those students who opt for the diploma program. This is about 15% of our student population. So there are 37 students in the senior class who take schedules similar to this, and you can see this student has more of a physics, computer science, and math focus. So because they are taking 2 courses in math, computer science, and math, they aren't required to take 1 in art. Instead of computer science, they could take either anthropology, they could take any other. You can double up in 1 or take an elective in IB. So this is a sample schedule of a diploma program student. This is a more typical student schedule. 75% of the students in our school take an average of 2.5 or 3 AP or IB courses over their time in the high school. It's very common that nearly every student will take at least 1 advanced course before they graduate high school. This is a very typical student schedule. This student is going to take 3 AP exams and 4 IB exams. The left column shows their junior year, the right column shows their senior year. So this student, you'll see, has opted to take more in the math science area, but has taken Regents level courses like American Writers, English 12, and then U.S. History, and then Government Economics in 12th grade. But they are doubling up, you'll see, in science because they're taking both physics and chemistry in their senior year. Which may sound surprising, but many of our students are taking 2 sciences per year, which means they're taking 3 full periods of science in their schedule for 2 years. These are just some samples to show you how customizable and how many options that you have. So this student, you can see, is taking more of an emphasis on the humanities. They're taking the IB Language and Literature course, they're taking the IB History course, and they're also sitting for those exams. They will take 4 AP exams and 2 IB exams. So this is a humanities-focused type student who is taking Regents level pre-calculus and calculus, and you can see that their science, they're taking Regents physics, and then they are taking AP IB biology. So they will take the AP bio exam. So the one thing that's interesting about that is that course, the AP IB biology, after 1 year they would be expected to take the AP, and you do not take an IB exam in that year. The IB exam is in senior year. So it's really AP biology. And in senior year, if you continue with IB, you'd be then sitting for the IB exam. And I know that much of this, if you're not a high school parent, may seem very mystical. And the truth of the matter is, you actually do need a guide to sit with you to walk through all of the options. And that is why, for any student who's opting to take all of this demanding course load, Dr. Titone would join you at that meeting if you're looking at the IB program. But each of the counselors are expert at recognizing all of the options to you, but they're also expert in kids and helping you balance out your student's life. Because while all of this is important, it's also important that they do have some time. And the students who are opting for the first two schedules I showed you have no time other than school, and school does consume their life. And that's something that I think I would love to see change, and I'm going to make some recommendations for that. Another sample schedule. I think you could, hopefully by now you can get the idea that there are a lot of options. This is very common. A student will take either all honors in the math science range or in the humanities, and they'll take a smattering of AP and IB exams. This is really kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting experience with different type of instruction, different types of assessment. You're being challenged to do oral presentations as part of assessment, but you're also being challenged to be able to produce on an unknown multiple choice. So there's some benefit to having both in terms of the flexibility of the mind of the learner to prepare them for whatever they're going to encounter once they go on beyond North Shore. I've taken this slide on tour with me. I've shown it everywhere I've gone. I think this is the third or fourth time I presented this slide. It's astonishing. Just in May of 2017, so in 1 month, we gave 986 exams, 369 IB exams, and 617 AP exams. That is in 1 month, in one little high school. That's how many exams our students are taking. You can see the data here, 617 AP exams taken by 357 students. So 357 different students took at least an AP exam, and then 275 students took at least one IB exam. I showed this slide to the 8th grade parents. We had on Tuesday, we were giving them an introduction to the high school, and I think this is important. We had actually taken some time to look at the quality of life for our students, and our students are being asked to do a lot because this is all that they can choose to do. And believe it or not, the students who are taking the most rigorous schedules are on their varsity athletics. They're in the play, and they are starting their homework just because of school obligations, 8, 9 o'clock at night up until 1, 2 in the morning, doing all of this work. Now, while that may work for some, I do think it's important that when we're having this conversation about all of these advanced courses, that we also recognize this is also school, there's also learning here, and we want to preserve that for our students. And that's important to us. And so when we're looking at all of these programs, all of these options, I do worry about us spending a lot of time only preparing for tests when there's also important other things that happen in our school that make a big difference. Which leads me to some opportunities for us looking forward. I think we need to continue to review what we're offering. This is our proposal for the next school year. I think annually we need to continue to monitor the performance of how our students are performing on these, making sure that our instructional choices are really lining up with what's healthy for the students. Because that health in number 2, we have to have a better balance with what's going on. There are many things about our school's program that I would change, and one of them is the overall coordination of when big events happen for the students. There are certain hot spots. This month was one of them. If you were a senior IB student, January is a really terrible month unless you are an impeccable planner and were on things, which they're adolescents. We don't believe that we want them to be, but they're your children. It was a very tough month. Everything was due 1 day, 2 days later, multiple assessments, and that's where we need to make some real significant adjustments. Which leads me to looking at the master schedule. There are many creative schedules out there. We still are very traditional in offering a 9-period, 40-minute blocks of these courses, which means you meet every single day. Many of our students who went through IB, the first cohort is in college now, when they came back, we were giving them their diploma, asking them how they're going, and they felt, wow, we have so much more time in college because we're taking fewer courses, rigorous courses, obviously, but they actually had time to manage that, and we are packing them in so much. There are some creative schedule options. I would love to spend some time looking at that with the focus back on bullet 2, which how we can make a better more well student population that isn't so anxious and isn't up all night doing work for all of these rigorous courses. And finally, I think it's important, it's on us to make sure that we continue to do professional development to support the teachers in integrating those courses so that the students can have the benefit of both experiences. And what I really want you to take from what I'm saying is that we are committed to providing the education that you want for your children, while assuring you that we are experts in learning and in education, and that we will make those choices that are also going to prepare them very well when they leave us. And we listen, we try to talk to as many people as possible. You know, I speak with Linda about what colleges are looking for. We want our students to be the most appealing when they're applying. But we also want them to be successful and happy when they're there. And there's room for us to grow with that. And I think the student voice at the table is very critical. And I can tell you that the one thing that they're not looking for is more rigor, because they're really rigoring as much as they can. And they're doing great. That's what the beauty of it is. Talking to the teachers, I know Carrie's had the luxury, being new, to speak to them. They will really remark on the quality of what our students are producing. So it's not only what they know, but it's what they can do now. How comfortable they are articulating their thoughts, how comfortable they are with writing. And so where that's working, we are making fewer changes. We had some opportunities with the sciences, so we're making some recommendations to address that. But I want you to know that we are constantly self-examining, listening to the community, listening to the students and to the faculty to make sure that we have anything that it is that someone would want from their school experience. And that is the end of my presentation.
Okay, so first of all, let me say thank you. That was a terrific presentation. Thank you to both of you, and for all of you for collaborating together to answer our questions, to give us examples. I think that was extremely helpful. I'm going to open it up to questions from the board first, if anybody wants to make a question or comment. I'm sorry, I saw Rich first. Go ahead, Rich.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I actually have a couple of questions, but I'll limit it to one and
Okay,
come
and then we'll
to
come
me.
back around. That's perfect. Thank you, Rich.
Dr. Titone, in your experience coming from Northport schools where they have run simultaneously AP and IB programs, how many of the courses that we're preparing to co-seat were actually co-seated there?
The number fluctuates year to year. In chemistry, it has been taught, has been co-seated. Same with biology, there have been years where it was separate sections, and then there are years where it was co-seated. This year, world language is being co-sat, and computer science.
And I'm sorry, I just want to follow up. And in the years where they were co-seated as opposed to being independent classes, was there a significant difference in terms of outcomes on the external standard?
I have not examined the scores in the subject areas for Northport outside of world language. But from the teacher anecdotes, they say it's still definitely a rigorous course, but they are able to attain the goals, and the students do feel successful with the technical exam.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Herman was next.
I think offering both AP and IB to the extent that we're offering them as a a real strength of the district and a real strength of the high school. How many other schools offer students this level of opportunity? Long Island schools.
No idea.
You can take it, sure.
I think that we have
we've
looked
looked
at
at
other
it.
programs, and there's a different, some have different philosophies about what they offer in conjunction. They don't, it's very difficult to run both from a sectioning standpoint because from staffing alone, a smaller school has fewer options. What we often see is that the students who opt for IB, for example, is very prescribed, so there's not many choices. When I compare us to some other Long Island districts, we have a lot more opportunities for choices versus being kind of forced into one option, only one option for that grade. And I think that those decisions are primarily driven by staffing constraints, because oftentimes, especially in the sciences, you have a certification, and the teacher's only certified in that one area of science. But we did look at that, and I think that if you follow like pathways, we have a lot more pathways and options that or permutations for students to pursue that. Even offering 2 levels of IB math, 2 levels, all throughout that, it just provides more options.
Thank you.
Sarah, then Dave.
I really appreciated the examples that you gave us of what someone's junior and senior year could look like. I was thinking that, given the pride and the emphasis we have on kids and participating in the arts and music, I didn't see schedules with kids that were in band and orchestra or that were also taking research. And so, given that I think we've all heard at least lots of tales and some numbers about the number of kids who do not take lunch routinely because they're doing these things. And given your discussion of balance, could we talk about how many kids are eating lunch and how kids can do things like participate in the arts and music and things like research while still pursuing these courses?
Well, the truth of the matter is we've actually had to exercise a lot of use, and I'm mixed about this, but the before school period is how we've really been able to accommodate a lot. So we offered physical education before school, and many of our students in the most demanding schedule have opted to do phys ed in the morning to free up time in the day so they can have a lunch. They have time midday to just decompress. So that's been one thing. And now, currently, upper level research is in the day, but we have a model of science research before school. So a student would, and we've actually been working this out in the past 2 days. Council and I were looking at a schedule, and we looked at offering, because science research is an every other day course, often by appointment, depending on where they are in the project. And then, unfortunately, what that means is we're extending the day a little bit longer because it's starting before. But in order to maintain lunch for a student who wants to take every course that they possibly could, and be in the musical ensemble, you're going to be tapping into those kind of the 0 period slot.
And just for everybody, the 0 period, you mean starting the school day at 7:30, 7:20?
7:20.
This chorus used to be there, and now that's not. We have many students take phys ed, and many students take math research, science research, music, IB music. So they do that so that they can continue to have a full schedule. Believe it or not, the number we counsel students to always have lunch. It's sometimes very difficult to have a student and family support that lunch because there's an opportunity to take another rigorous course that they believe will be the tipping point for an acceptance. But I don't know if the benefits outweigh the challenges of a student who goes from 7:20 until 3:55 completely scheduled. But I will tell you that we've really had some tough conversations trying to protect people from that decision. But ultimately, we are a self-selection school. We do let students do that. But
So we do have those kids. You're saying they're going from like 7, no lunch.
We absolutely do. And yes, against our recommendation from a mental health perspective.
I think
Okay,
Dave was ahead
Dave
of
was
me.
next.
Okay,
Yep.
so just a quick question, because it came up last time. Is it fair to say that now that we have both programs established in our district, whatever permutation we have, and of course you listed several good options for our students, the cost is minimal because it really was an up and running cost, but the cost to maintain them is not substantial at this point?
Right, that's exactly right. The students are basically have a fixed number. The average is, we've been tracking the data now, we're into the 4th year of tracking how students are enrolling. So the students haven't changed, the number, and it's the nature of the teacher's schedule. If they were teaching maybe AP US history, now they're teaching IB history. So by not running both, that we aren't expanding a teacher, because we're kind of just, the students are still there in the classroom, so we're able to, we've been very stable. It's caused no, even with this, it causes no increase in staffing whatsoever.
All right, good. And I also...
Go ahead, finish up.
I wanted to welcome Kerry and Linda, of course, to the district. I had a couple questions from the counseling perspective, Linda. We had talked last time about current acceptance by colleges of AP credit. Can you tell us a little bit about how they're viewing those now and how our students will fit into that?
What's really difficult with AP, the acceptance of AP credits, is that it varies by institution, and it also varies by department within the institution, and it also can vary year to year. So what the College Board does is post on a website all of the programs within their college, what AP scores they'll accept, and what programs, and what that looks like at the college level. So that is out there. Obviously, when you take more, you do well on AP exams, that looks good for your admissions acceptance, but it's really hard to say just because you can take the same student at the same college, and this one may get credits for everything, and student B may not because they chose different majors within that college.
So the perception that taking a lot of AP classes in high school is going to get you graduating in 3.5 years, my understanding is a lot of colleges want you there for that 4 years, either because...
They want the money.
that was going to be choice 2. But yeah, I mean, they'll claim they want to educate you in that way, but
No,
obviously
they really want the money.
they want 8 semesters of your money, and your attendance and your meal plan and all the rest of that. So schools are getting away from the idea that you can save some cash by getting it out of the way in high school.
And that's something, I sit on a national board, the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, and I can tell you behind the scenes, that is something they talk about. Is it ethical to do that? Because we want our students to take the rigorous courses, and yet in some cases, we're denying credit for that. So that's an ongoing conversation even in those circles.
Okay, so I have a couple things because I want to pick up on 2 things that you said, Dave, because
Only because the college is looking for extra money comment came up. I think it needs a response because...
I'm going to address that. If you
Okay.
could just let me
Okay.
address it. So, as you said, there are different colleges, and depending on the college, depending upon the score, depending on your major, does depend whether or not they accept the course. But getting those AP course credits has multiple advantages. One is that my daughter had enough AP credit that she could register in her freshman year as a sophomore, which gave her better course opportunities. So even if she didn't graduate early, which actually she could have graduated a semester early from Fordham University if she had not switched majors, it does give you the opportunity to either pursue master's courses, which many of my daughter's friends have done and neighbors have done, and it does give you better opportunities in terms of course selection and enrollment. You get priority over other students that don't have that credit. There are many instances that I could tell you both in my family, in the neighborhood here, in my daughter's friends, in my daughter's classmates in the class of 2014, that were able to graduate in 3.5 years, or some of them, my nephew, in 3 years, which is a significant savings to families that maybe don't have the money or have multiple children going into school. So I don't think it should be sneezed at. I do understand your point about I think some of the universities don't allow students to graduate early because they see value in a student going through their own curriculum. Even at Fordham or especially at the Ivy League schools, some of the more competitive schools, they do want you to go through their comp class or their certain programs because they feel that that education is more comprehensive and a better foundation, if that's what you were going to.
I think that's part of it. I think students change majors more often. They come with a major, really not sure what that major is, find after a course or two it's not a good fit. For many years they just stuck with it. Now students tend to take a step back and say, let me see the major that's the best fit for me and an area I have passion for. Students tend to drop courses more quickly than they did years ago because they're very focused on their grade point average. It's easier to drop a course than not to do well in a course. It takes longer. More students take study abroad. They tend to slow down the number of credits they accumulate for a semester because they take study abroad. More and more students now are going for combined bachelor's and master's degrees, so it's really a very different equation than it was before. So I think it is very little of this is a college trying to maximize its income on the backs of students. More of it is really a change in the behavior pattern of the population and also a change in what students are looking for.
But my point is that if you're, as I was saying with some of my own personal experiences with children in the community, my own children's friends, is that when you have these course credits, whether they're AP or IB, it does give you the opportunity to pursue your master's courses earlier.
Yes.
Right? So that was my point, but that wasn't really what I was going to bring up, but I just wanted to follow up on Dave's comment because I don't want people leaving here thinking that getting those credits is not significant. It is significant for students. The other thing I wanted to talk about and clarify, one of the other things, is that when we look at the exam numbers, you have to remember that prior to the class of 2017, so prior to 2016, no, even in 2016, so it wasn't until the year 2017 that the senior experience was basically whittled down to one section. So when students went through to the class of 2013, 14, 15, and 16, periods 7, 8, and 9, there were no AP courses being run because of the senior experience. So that senior experience was your history and your social studies and your English requirement. And because they needed block periods and some of the kids had internships as part of that senior experience, there were no AP courses being run during those periods, and that impacted both exams being taken in junior year and exams being taken in senior year. In fact, I had an experience where my daughter was blocked out of taking AP exams because of that reservation. So when we switched into the IB curriculum, it freed up 3 additional periods. We could have done that by just eliminating the senior experience and just putting in AP courses, and we could have done that at no additional cost. So the cost, you're exactly right, is not in running the programs, right? The cost was in doing the IB training, which was very expensive. It was not all done on site. Some teachers were in Houston, some were in Toms River. You had to write your own curriculum, you had to submit it to the board, you had application fees. So that cost has already been paid, which leads me to one of my questions, is if indeed there's no additional cost to running the course, because you have teachers, as you said, who are teaching the AP, IB courses, who have taught the AP courses, why would you not just run a course as an AP course and have that student who wants that option be prepared as an AP student? It's the same number of students, it's just how you allocate them. The only time there might be an additional cost involved would be in terms of sections. And I think, I know from experience that IB biology, the first year, was very difficult for the class of 2017 because it was really the AP curriculum with a layering of IB. So it doesn't make sense to me to co-seat those classes. I don't know why, if there's no additional cost involved, you wouldn't just have separate tracks. And so that's one question. And the other question I have for you is, in the class of 2017, unless you were an IB diploma candidate, your academic transcript was not marked as the most rigorous curriculum. The only students got marked as the most rigorous curriculum were those students who were the IB diploma candidates. Now, I had a son who was taking 5 IB courses. He wasn't a diploma candidate, but he could have been. So if now you are saying that the AP curriculum, there's going to be an AP option, what are we doing about that designation for the kid who takes, I don't know, 12 AP courses? Or is that kid now not going to be designated in the most rigorous curriculum, which is what happened to the class of 2017 in the application process? So those are my questions.
Okay.
I can say the second question we've already addressed, evaluating what would be considered most rigorous. So anything in those slides that I showed, in either predominant focus, that would be considered most rigorous. Because it's really about the level. So as long as the student who's taking either AP or IB, that's the most rigorous program. And that's commonly known in the counseling department. So that is by rule on that. And really the decision about the co-seat, there's only 2 courses that really are options, and that is in the humanities, and that is because of a real strong belief, especially among the faculty who did teach the AP course, about what the students are doing in those courses. Now, if they want to take the AP US exam, they certainly can do that.
They aren't prepared for it.
They absolutely are. The performance of our students at AP US in the class of 2016, the current seniors, so the juniors, last year we took that test, and we had 85% of the students in the course took it, are performing better on the AP US than they did when it was a freestanding AP US. And I presented those in December. Similarly with the AP Comp, the students are performing the same or better than they did when it was a freestanding course. And that is only because of number one, the quality of the teachers of those courses and their commitment to the students being able to perform on the unknown. But that we do have the data that they are able to perform better than they did even when it was a freestanding.
For the class of 2017, for the AP US History exam, they were told that not all the material would be covered, and they had to take classes on their own to be prepared for the AP US History. So now you're going to take a kid that is in this rigorous curriculum, who you're worried about their well-being, and now you're going to require them to take extra support classes to excel on an AP US History exam, where they could have the option of taking the AP US History class on its own. And I've spoken to faculty members who want their AP US History class back, and they could do it in that year and have a separate track.
But so like we're not saying that they have to take it, and they only take one exam in 11th grade. You do not take an IB exam in history in 11th grade.
I know that.
And the class of 2017, the first cohort was very different than the class of the current seniors and before, even the numbers of students who took it. That first class, very few students took the AP US. The second year, there was an instant correction. The faculty approached us. They knew that the students would do well on that. And they did. They performed, and that was part of the presentation when I just reported on how they, and those are just how they performed. The students did better on the AP US. The juniors who took it, our current seniors, and so that's really all that I have. I mean, they're doing better on the AP US now, being in the IB.
Okay, let's move on. Dave, you had another comment, and I think Rich had another question as well.
Several
correct?
questions.
And Sarah does as well. Okay.
So I actually, I look back at my original questions that we had looked at when we first talked about this. and one of them was about student wellness. I'm really glad that you focused on that. In hearing your description of the way a lot of students are approaching their curriculum, I wouldn't say it's quantity over quality, but maybe it's quantity over sensibility, where the goal is to ram in as many classes as you possibly can. And I think it speaks to a larger point, again, with the college credit question, which is the point of an education isn't necessarily to take as much as you can, as fast as you can, and save money through it. This is a period of high school for our students where they're learning more than just the classes you showed there. I think Sarah was talking at this point also, talking about the opportunities for the arts or research. And I think even college isn't necessarily, you get 4 years in college. And the idea...
At $72,000 a year.
It's certainly expensive, but I think for those students who want that and those families that want that, it's important they have that. But I do want to emphasize that I asked about how we were going to take into account counseling students to make sure that the overall sense of wellness was important, and I think you all did a very good job at thinking about that it's not a question of cramming these courses down these kids as much and as hard as possible, but making sure it's appropriate for them, that they're actually getting something out of it.
Okay, let's, Sarah and then Chris.
I think,
No, go ahead.
so I appreciate that we're trying to respond to requests for more choices. And when you put up the slide with the 12 AP exams, right, you say, that's too many. But we're still, there's something about when you put up that slide that makes me think not just about sort of the balance per se, but that when we continue to engage over really several years about this sort of AP versus IB and then AP and IB discussion, I'm just really concerned that continuing to just focus on those two options, that we are participating in the race to nowhere. We're just deciding which rat race would be better for which kids. And it's starting to feel like a very false choice to me when we talk about what the day looks like for the kids that are pursuing these tracks.
So that's probably one of the most important points that we can make, right? And so let me say why. The focus of the presentation tonight was to take a look at these programs, the Advanced Placement and the International Baccalaureate programs, sort of in a silo. So what the goal was to show that over the course of a high school career, there are high levels of customization and evolution that can happen in your schedule, and accessibility is a key piece. The more important conversation, and we talk about this at length, as an educator, as a parent, is that balance, right? So while those courses, if you chose to do it, you could go through a sequence of 12 advanced placement courses. That's for a very, very small number of kids who could and should do that. For even some very small number of kids, they would be bored. They might be bored if they didn't have that. But the important point in the other schedules was to look at where does this all fit together. So if you're a humanities kid, can you focus on advanced coursework in humanities and then balance that with Regents level coursework or other kinds of coursework in the math and the sciences or the arts or whatever it might be. So the really important point is not that kids should do these things, it's that there is a whole compendium of coursework that's accessible to them. And then it's our job to work with counselors and parents and students to say, wait, let's really talk about what a balanced program looks like. Let's talk about how you can have a life outside of the North Shore High School that is healthy, that allows you to be in a band, that allows you to, be in a cycling club, that allows you to do something that's not within, be in a sport. It shouldn't be about it, and I agree with you, the world has become about a a kind of a rat race of who can take the highest level coursework, who can get the most rigorous, transcript, and there's the art of the transcript that kids play. But we have to be helping them to see how there are other parts of the puzzle that are equally important. Does that make sense? It doesn't solve the problem, but I don't think having the accessibility is the solution. To take away the accessibility, I don't think solves the root problem, which is an artificial emphasis that you have to take 12 APs in order to define a successful high school program.
Rich?
Yeah. I did a couple things. Albert responded to Dave in terms of funding and sectioning. And I understand that we have a fixed number of kids and you can reshuffle the deck and you could end up with the same number of sections. But we're really looking at kids at the quote-unquote upper end. I have a little concern about the kids at the other end. And in making some of these changes, and as you've known me forever, I am a huge proponent of this. I think it's a great idea to do this. However, I don't want it to be at the expense of the other end. So can we be assured that it's not going to sacrifice, even from a practical standpoint, staffing, because you're now shifting sections, where is it going to come from? Are we prepared to continue the depth of program that we have at the other end and not sacrifice that?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Okay. One more? No, I think you had another question. Go ahead.
I have, this is a real specific question. Again, I apologize. It's about physics. I see that, and I understand why you're looking to have a freestanding AP physics class, and I certainly appreciate that. I do have a question about why you would put the Mechanics C class as an option for the HL2. And there's a reason that I'm concerned about this. I know that in the HL2 program, one of the optional areas is engineering physics, and the engineering physics program certainly does encompass most of what's involved in the C curriculum. However, there's no calculus in the IB. The issue I'm having with it is this. The same topics in Physics C Mechanics are covered in Physics 1. And if you're having seniors that are taking AP Physics 1 who happen to be seniors and taking calculus at the same time, I think it would make more sense to give those kids the option of doing the C Mechanics than doing it with the kids in the HL2 class. And a big flaw in the program from my perspective is this. The kids at our top end going through the physics program here have been sacrificed in terms of things like electromagnetism. There's virtually no magnetism discussed. And, to me, it's like, it's tearing at me. It's like, how can you go through an advanced program and not study magnetism and not study modern physics? It's lacking. So I think a better option would be the HL2 program, which is run now for 2 years. They do a unit dealing with complex circuits. They deal with capacitance. They deal with potential. So it would make more sense to me to make the option for that class the Physics C E&M program and have them reintroduce magnetism, because it's an easy fix to do Physics 1 and Physics C Mechanics. I know, I've done it. So, I don't understand the rationale for doing that.
I actually didn't put any references to AP within AP, because that's typically, I know when we were there, that the students who took C came out of the AP physics. So I just didn't put that only because that was, in my mind, not a change. It was the that was as a result of meeting with both Sarah and Stephen around that. I think that doing the electro and the E&M makes much more sense in that, depending on the choices that they pick in the HL2.
Sure, because as I said, I know this year, for example, they're not doing engineering physics as part of the HL2 program, but they are doing complex circuits and electricity. So it's and they did it last year. So to me, that's what's been offered. It's a much cleaner fit.
I agree with that, and I would definitely have that conversation with them. I just wanted to show that the freestanding AP as an entity needed to be there in terms of even the topics of selection of topics in the HL2 need to be looked at in order to maximize the options for those students to take.
Sure.
There's so many confounding situations with that, because we also want to make sure the IB biology students, and we want to make sure they have a single, if they take physics, it can be done in 1 year. That was really the biggest impact. But I also would like to go along with that. Regents physics is an excellent course. And I think we're forgetting that, as Sarah's point is, we have Regents calculus. It's a tough course. But because we have IB, students will take AP, thinking AP is easy. It's just this weird mentality that happens. And the truth of the matter is we have rigorous, calculus is hard, period. But the numbers of students taking AP calculus is tripled in the past 2 years. And I think that's similar with physics. Everyone's taking more and more rigorous courses, and it has a lot to do with the math foundation, which is what also encourages students in physics in particular, is making sure they're in the correct corresponding math course that lines up with the physics course. Because most of the struggles, at least reported to us, in physics are coming from the readiness of math.
Okay. Rich, did you have others?
I have another one too.
Okay,
That's
sure,
okay.
go ahead.
Sorry. I know that the district was very invested in teacher preparation for the IB program. And I'm aware of the fact that many of the teachers in the high school who will be involved in these changes do have AP experience, but especially when you're co-seating them, I think that's a completely different animal. And I'm just wondering, how is the district prepared to support these people in terms of making this transition?
You can take, sure, by all means, go ahead.
Basically, all of those decisions were made on recommendation of the teaching professionals now. Each one is very, very different. Each course, it has very particular details involving the course, so we really relied a lot on the teacher of the AP course who teaches the IB course to see just the extent of that. And I think, to Mary Ann's point, the first year of IB biology was epic. It's legendary. It's almost as legendary as honors chemistry, almost. But, so we really looked at that, and certainly we had a conversation with Mr. Klein about chemistry, and to see, can that be done? What needs to happen in earth science and in chemistry, or honors chemistry, to make sure that those students are, so it has a lot to do with the total program and not just the individual course. Because some of it has to do with the skills and the unique approaches to science that are required in those courses. So those ones are very particular. In languages, Carrie's better to speak to that. She did it in Northport, in her class.
Sure. When you want to produce a course that is co-seated, in my experience, you need to have the resources at hand, whether that is opportunities for a teacher to attend a training or EP, or whether it's turnkey training from a colleague. Same with IB. If a colleague goes to training, if the individual goes on their own, whatever resources are out there, you pool those resources to see what are the guiding objectives for the course. And what are the objectives that need to be targeted for the learner. And then you take those two together and hybrid those, and build a course from the core of what is most similar. You start at the ground of what is most similar. And then you make sure that you pad it and fill the slots where they are entirely different to make sure that you've covered all the ground. The nice thing with foreign language is that you have 2 years to accomplish it.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I just had a couple of comments as well. You said at the end of your presentation, Mr. Cousins, that you would like to look into creative scheduling. And I'm curious if you have any knowledge, being that the IB curriculum is a little bit stricter than AP when it comes to laying out your coursework over the years. Are they flexible? Do you know, are there limitations in the IB program to change it, to a change in scheduling?
They're actually not, like on paper, it seems very, very rigid, because it doesn't necessarily fit into a 40-minute period. But if you look at semestering, there's some courses that can exist for either, a single semester at greater length, which is supposed to mean the number of hours. So the IB courses are really driven by hours. So in some instances, we are providing more hours of instruction in those courses. Being in the United States, in New York, where our school year starts. So those exams, similar with AP, there are some schools that start school in August. So they're preparing for 2 to 3 weeks more for that same test.
Sure.
So all IB cares about is the number of hours, and that there's concurrency of learning, meaning that because the courses that they're in all work together around that core. But you could look at the amount of time a student spends in a course over the week and adjust that accordingly. Some schools have done it effectively through semestering, or even like trimesters, having courses run in different timelines. So there are creative solutions to doing that still allow you to have daily music ensembles and things like that.
So I'm assuming AP could work that way as well? AP could work that way as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in many cases we're providing more class time than is required both by the College Board and by IB.
Okay, I wanted to add one other thing, which was, and to thank Linda for her unique perspective. It's great to have her here. We're so happy she's here. I know she collaborated on some of this with you guys when you were working through, and I know she collaborates with the rest of the faculty as well. But having her national perspective and sitting on the national boards, we were all very excited about, her experiences and bringing them in. So I just wanted to comment to that so that everyone knew that those were some of the wonderful things that Linda was bringing to our guidance department this year. So thank you, Linda. I had one other question. One other comment and I think Peter touched on it. When a student is making their schedule for the next year, I think it's very important. You talked about how they have to work with the guidance counselor, and that they have to make healthy choices for themselves as well as rigorous choices, and they work with their guidance counselor. But for those of you who don't have students in the high school, the teachers that work with them every day also make recommendations when they go to do their schedule. So they're not pulling it out of thin air. There is recommendations based upon someone that has experience with that kid every single day the year prior to when they're setting that schedule. And I think that that's very important, that when our kids set their schedules, they collaborate. They're collaborating with their parents, with their teacher recommendation, with their guidance counselor, perhaps with the AP IB coordinator, that they're not just making a decision in a vacuum. So I think that's a really important comment with it. Marianne, you had another question?
I just wanted to mention that if you look at Chaminade, it's gone to block scheduling for all 4 years. That's another option, which looks more like a college schedule, so that you would have maybe your science courses and your social studies course on one day, and it will be done in blocks. So rather than meeting every day, you meet for longer periods of time. And it's certainly an interesting concept. I don't know how it would work for us, but it's certainly something that we should look at. And I do want to go back on something that Mr. Galati Trustee Galati had brought up, which I think is teacher training, and not just at the AP and the IB level, but at the Regents level. So I think last year's results on the AP and the IB exam for the year 2017, some of those were really abysmal, to put it politely. And I think part of that was really the loss of the 3G network, Galati, Groom, and Gerver, right? I mean, that was a huge loss. Ms. Groom, first of all, she was an actuary. I mean, you know how smart you have to be an actuary? She was amazing. And I think she taught that course for so many years. Mr. Galati, you know, he's legendary. And Dr. Gerver, of course, did our math research and our AP Stats course. I think we missed a very valuable opportunity for mentoring, for having people with that kind of experience take young teachers under their wing and prepare them. And as we were talking about earlier in executive session, so it's a teacher's first year teaching a course. And nothing wrong with the teacher, but you know, sometimes she can't or he can't spot what a teacher with 30 years experience just instinctively knows. And I'll give you an example that there was something that my son was doing very well in one particular math course that he was taking, and it was the teacher's first year. Not that the teacher wasn't a great teacher, the teacher was a great teacher, still is, but he hit a bump in the road, and we couldn't figure out why he was not doing well. Within 15 minutes, Dr. Gerver could, you know, isolate what the problem was. And that's just 30 years of experience teaching. But we have people who may be coming up for retirement or have been here a lot of years and have a lot of value. And I know we have money in the budget for mentoring, and I want to make sure we're taking those young teachers in under their wings, and I want to make sure that we're preparing teachers. So I've had experience where a teacher was not certified, it was a science teacher that was not certified in that subject matter, that taught that subject matter and had absolutely no training in that subject matter. Miserable experience. And we've had teachers who haven't taught a course in 20 years and now are teaching it because of retirements. What are we doing to refresh their knowledge and train those teachers to teach these courses? Because you can be certified in science and not be certified in physics or chemistry and end up teaching that course. So what are we doing to make sure that these teachers are trained and knowledgeable on day one in the classroom?
So as we build, Albert and I, as the course selections are made, Albert and I will be looking at each and every single one of those, all this related to the staffing. So who's going to be teaching what do they need to be successful in those courses? So, and then that's our responsibility to make sure that those teachers are prepared and selected to teach the courses that they are best suited to teach. So we're going to look. So the simple answer is we will look at every single teacher and make sure that they're equipped to teach the courses that they're being assigned to teach.
And if there is a situation where a teacher is being reassigned to not teach what their specialty is, are we going to ensure that that teacher gets training in that specific subject matter? It's really important.
I agree with you. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Trustees, are there any other questions on the presentation? Then thank you, Albert, and everyone, for an incredibly thoughtful and well-prepared presentation, which obviously, you know, was of great interest to the trustees. And thank you for staying to follow up with all of our questions. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. If you have a comment, if you would please approach the podium. We just ask that you give us your name and town of residence. And if there appears to be a lot of interest in public comment, if you would be considerate of everyone else's time. Thank you. Name and town of residence.
Oh. Denise Reiner, Glenhead. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Principal Cousins. First, off of what we just spoke about, and this is just a general comment and also has to do with the budget and courses. The Victorian that's been standing there that I made a donation towards 7 years ago,
maybe also 8 years ago. That's been completed now for, I don't know how many years has it been completed? Does anybody know? The Victorian? And so basically, I'm looking at a budget that will be presented. I know that we're trying to do things with our curriculum without adding to the budget, and yet there's this Victorian that we've spent a lot of money on building, a lot of resources. Students put work into it. It was a learning experience, and I'd like to know when the radio and TV station and the courses and how this was going to benefit the students and all of the resources that came in from the community, when it's going to actually come to fruition, and if my children, who, when I put the money in 7 years ago, if they'll ever get a chance to actually get benefit.
So we've had, what is the company, Dan Cox, what is it? All right, so we've had somebody come, evaluate the space, give us a proposal to outfit that space for TV, video, and production. It is several $100,000 worth of equipment that needs to happen in there. So we are in the process, we need to phase that in over 2 or 3 years. But this upcoming budget has resources in it to get that process going with some of the basic equipment, so it can start being used for its intended purpose.
For that kind of money, is that money that, I know the Viking Foundation can't put money into curriculum, but since the Viking Foundation put so much money into the building of it, can we just finish it up sooner?
I can speak with them, sure. I don't know, I can't commit
No,
commit their resources, but I would be happy to
just
talk with them.
Alrighty, and then Sarah, just based upon your comment about the race to nowhere, I went to the LAC meeting, was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago? And Senator Marcelino, Herman brought up the APPR, and Marcelino basically said that he believed that choice should be given to the schools and power to the schools, as long as we all get to whatever endpoint we want in the end. So what I'm going to say is that this district is made up of diversity as far as different types of families and what they want for their children. And I think that the spread is wide. So I think it is important to give all of the choices that we can, and to respect everybody with those choices. And like Mr. Galati pointed out, he wanted to make sure that there was still strength, I'm assuming, in the Regents programs and the honors programs. So there is you don't have to feel a race to nowhere if you decide to go on a certain path. You should feel happy with that path, but you shouldn't deny others who maybe don't see the AP or the IB path as a race to nowhere. For them, it's a race to somewhere. So I think giving choice and respecting everybody's different paths, and just like Marcelino said, as long as you reach that endpoint is the type of education that you can get from North Shore, no matter what the path is that you wish to take. Already, I had a couple of other things, but I don't want to waste time and take it away from other people.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm a high school senior in the IB diploma program. I'm an IB diploma candidate, and I just have a couple things that I think they've addressed mostly through the presentation, but I still want to bring attention to. I've been speaking individually with Dr. Titone as well as some of the other teachers. But I think that there really is a problem that, even though they're trying to work on it for next year, we need to fix the ability for a lot of faculty members to coordinate the deadlines for big assessments. Like this last month, I've had to write college applications due every 2 or 3 days, plus I've had 5 internal assessment papers due, which are IB class specific. And I've had deadlines for those pretty much every day or every other day school days. So the idea that the problem that I've been having is that most of my assignments I've been obviously not trying to procrastinate, but you kind of get forced into that because you're spending, like, say, a Monday night trying to finish a history investigation, and then the Tuesday night you have to finish a biology investigation. And if you wanted to, you would not be able to space out that 2 or 3 week assignment because you'd have huge deadlines the next day for other classes that the teachers, I don't know if they're aware of, but it needs to be considered and addressed by, I guess, the administration. There needs to be something that happens so that they can coordinate deadlines better, so that there's some internal assessments that could be done earlier in the year, like November, December. I definitely could have started my biology experiment before 2 weeks before December break, and had that due right as I was writing college applications, and things like that. And they were even talking about how there's students like myself. I run cross country and track 3 seasons pretty much the whole year, probably 45 out of the 52 weeks out of the year I'm running, even during the summer. And by the time I get home at 4:30, 5 o'clock, eat dinner, shower, by the time I start homework it is 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And I classify myself as a very diligent worker, someone that's able to concentrate, but I do not go to sleep consistently. I do not go to sleep before 11 p.m. at night. And that's a serious concern, both for myself and for a lot of the other students within this program. I have similar complaints, pretty much the exact same problem, if not more severe, that they're having. And I do want to address, everybody was talking about the co-seating for biology, computer science, things like that. I am in the IB biology course. I took IB year 1 last year. I'm taking IB year 2 this year. And I was, even though I did take the AP exam for biology, I was very successful in that. And I think that it still is it is something that would be good to consider, because obviously the kids can get more credits for college courses. And that offering, I think, is very important. But I think the biggest problem that I'm having now is this December, January, February, that all the IB diploma candidates, all 37 of us, are mostly unanimous, except for the ones that think that the grade below should have to go through the same thing as us. But everybody's been having the same problems, and if you ask any of the diploma candidates, you can pull the list, and if you ask any of them, they're all going to have the same problems. And I think a lot of the teachers, some of the teachers are aware of this, and they're trying to lower and loosen the workload on us, but it's something that's really not possible given even though IB is extremely flexible, it is a problem that we're still having, and I think that really needs to be addressed from a higher up perspective than just the teachers having their own responsibility, because a lot of the teachers don't know what else is going on in our classes. They don't really communicate a lot. I know there's a lot of schools that have certain days where certain departments can give assessments. I don't know if something to that extreme is really necessary, but something as far as the bigger deadlines like IAs and the extended essay are really things that need to be considered for our school.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you so much.
And if I can just say, Ethan, we absolutely agree with you. We've been having these conversations over and over and over again over the past several weeks, and we are really looking to give you guys some relief for sure. So thank you very much for bringing it to the board's attention.
Scheduling problem was a problem in 2015-16 school year, and we are now 2.5 years down the road and we haven't solved it. So that is a huge issue. My son didn't go to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning on a regular basis. And the kids who were in the IB diploma program from the class of 2017, at this time of year, they really were on the edge, and in May as well. So I cannot understand how we are 2.5 years into it and we can't figure out how to do a Google Doc and get people to comply with it and make life bearable for the students. It's beyond me that it's that difficult.
Hi, Lauren Truisi, Glen Head. Mary Ann just kind of summarized the direction I was going to go with the comments. And I'm going to apologize in advance. My pen ran out of ink. I'm losing my voice, so it's like chicken scratch. First of all, I came in during Peter's presentation. I want to personally thank Peter for not just going through the normal budget process and passing or proposing a budget. I want to thank him for being very sensitive to the community during this critical time, and also evaluating the process, not just the numbers, but the process itself, which I think will lead us to a more transparent and a more effective end game as it relates to the budget. So in that regard, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
In terms of IB, as Denise mentioned, I believe, our community is very diverse. I think the strength of our community is the diversity. I think the strength of our school system is the breadth of opportunity that we offer. I think the challenge to our community is to offer the balance without compromising the opportunity. Somebody just mentioned, I think Denise again, two different perspectives between Sarah and Denise in terms of what they considered a priority in terms of the education or the path. So I think that we need to respect and value the differences, and I think it's very important for us to, while we're offering that breadth of curriculum, not lose sight of the fact that some people do want that high-level opportunity. And that brings me to IB, which has been a paradox from day one. I think the argument for too long, for too many years, was, is IB good for our school? And I don't think that ever should have been the discussion. I think the discussion should have been, how can we, IB and AP, peacefully and effectively coexist? I think we lost a lot of ground trying to, put one above the other or value one above the other, and I think that cost us a lot of time. And it also, I think, in some ways, I want to be careful how I say this, in some ways it compromised the product and the opportunity for the children that were at the leading edge of the introduction of IB. I'm talking about the current freshmen in college. I'm talking about the current seniors in high school. Any introduction of a new program is going to be difficult. It's going to have challenges, but these two courses are almost seemingly diametrically opposed. If you look at, for example, we talked about, let's pick one, bio, and how in one case bio is 2 years for the IB exam, and in the other case it's 1 year for AP. And I want to thank, is it Ethan, who was up here? I want to thank him for his perspective. I think it's very important, and he actually picked that class as well. That's why I jotted it down. There is no way that the depth of the dive in the 1 year AP program in biology can be taught in another program which goes over 2 years. The whole premise is different. One is a broad level with critical thinking, with the breadth of thinking around the topic. The other one is a 1 year concentrated deep dive. So when IB came in, it was a contradiction in terms of, okay, what do I do? Do I take AP Physics and AP Bio or AP Chem, or do I invest 2 years into an IB program for one subject matter? Do I get that breadth of experience to see which topic I like better, what's more interesting, or do I go for more college credit? So I think from the inception, there was a lot of conflict in scheduling and a lot of confusion. And the other thing was, from day one, Albert, he's worked very hard on this. I mean, I think sometimes much harder than people can appreciate, but I think in this case the community wasn't heard. When you see a lot of people here at 10, 11 o'clock, and I'm addressing the board specifically, when you see the hundreds of people that came around for IB, when you see the people sitting here at 10, 10:30, it matters. And it doesn't just matter, it means that something maybe is imperfect, something is a cause for concern. And I think back then, that concern, maybe it was heard, but that didn't translate into a modification. And in some cases, the modifications were complex. It involved staffing, it involved logistics in terms of coordination between teachers and planning, it involved costs. So when I see the presentation today, I was so pleased. I felt like, although it was several years later, I feel like directionally it's exactly what we needed. I'm sure it can be better, but I'm sure it's directionally what we need. And I've always told Albert, my daughters will have a much better experience or opportunity than Michael has had, simply because of the evolution of IB. But I do want to emphasize that last point. I think when it comes to the cost factor, it's a lot cheaper to do this the right way first. And I think that we should evaluate the teachers when you talk about homogenizing the programs. I think we should carefully look at the logistics, which I know Albert will do. I think we should definitely look at the coordination between the teachers, the right fit, the right class. Another collateral issue was not in the AP IB class, but when students went into that AP or IB class and then had to come out, they couldn't get in the Regents class. They simply couldn't. If it was bio, if it was chem, if it was physics. So I think that collateral issue of making sure that we have the Regents classes strong and ready to take the backflow of students that may have overreached and now want to come out, that's going to be another issue. But the main point was, I think we're headed in the right direction. I think the challenge will be met now in the next year of having that balance without compromising the opportunity for those who choose the AP path. And I think that we should be brave, very brave in terms of what it takes to do this next year and not compromise at all, whether it's cost, whether it's staffing, whatever the issue is, we should do what it takes for the students, because the last thing we should do is adversely affect our kids. So that's it.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. Derek Schonoff in Glen Head. I was curious. I have an IB diploma student. She's a junior. For some reason, she's actually here with me. It's kind of crazy. Has this changed for next year for her? There's all this curriculum. Because the question I have is, she's got to go meet her guidance counselor on Tuesday to pick the classes for next year and trying to figure out what to do. So, just a little bit confused there how that works.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that I too have an IB diploma
together in the
candidate
same
who's
class.
a junior, and we
Yeah.
just did his schedule, and
Yeah.
everything worked out. So
But what we just got presented will be presented to her on Tuesday? That was my question.
I've been working closely with Dr. Gears about this proposal, and also with Linda with the counseling office. So we have, the counselors are meeting with me tomorrow morning, assuming, once we get feedback from the board that that we can move ahead with our recommendation, and we are completely prepared. And also Dr. Titone will sit with her and you, whoever attends that counseling session. Basically, what you'll have are some options if you want to take additional assessment. It really is individualized and kind of, finding out. But as far as if you remember from 10th grade to 11th, we kind of made a 2-year projection. The most likely path would be to continue on that trajectory, unless there's some additional feedback that she has from her experiences. But all it will do is just provide more choice and options for you, or for her to make. But the counselors are very much ready to know the relative benefit to all of the options.
But to get the ID diploma, she still needs to take like a 2-year science program where she's in physics right now. She still has to take physics next year.
The checklist for to continue to meet the criteria that we're going ahead with the checklist.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, you will have additional support. Dr. Titone will sit with you, so you'll have that as well. So you'll have both the counselor and Dr.
Okay, thank you.
okay. So anyone else? Oh.
Should I
stand that here. Agatha Nadell, Glen Head. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Superintendent Giarrizzo and to the board for allowing me to express my opinions and facts with American Water at the last meeting, and also with my family's experience, my husband's, mine, and my 2 kids' experience through North Shore. I want to make clear, I will repeat, that overall we felt the education was excellent, but when I critiqued, it was not meant to be an attack, it was meant to make the district better, to plug the gaps, some of the gaps have been there for a while. And I just wanted to say that I welcome Superintendent Giarrizzo. If you want more details about the 4 of us that went through the district, I'd love to have coffee with you, and I can give you more specifics. I don't want to waste anyone's time.
Terrific.
The other thing I just wanted to clarify, there were a couple points at the last meeting with regards to American Water that had challenged my research on the issue of the LIPA plant decommissioning. Can everyone hear me, by the way? Okay. And its effect on the American Water ratepayers. I wanted to say also that one of the best things that I learned in this district was my research skills, my preparation skills, and to never fly off the hip. And I took a lot of time when I researched to speak last time. A few things were challenged, and I want to correct them with documentation for the record. So I'd like to submit some copies to the board and to the superintendent, and I do have some extras if anyone would like to see them. And then I'll just explain quickly what I'd like to correct.
Why don't I pass them out and then you can start?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the points that was challenged in my speech by Carolyn Genovese was that the district didn't know until 2013. That was the first time we heard of the decommissioning. This is exactly what was said. I'd like you to pay particular attention in that handout to the Newsday article and to the date of that Newsday article. It is July of 2012. And I would like to read just quickly one line from the LIPA spokesperson. Quote, several years ago with the expectation, we've been talking about ending plant operations several years ago with the expectation that local governments and the school district would have ample time to plan for any reduction in property tax payments. I also found today, which I didn't have time to include in there, from a January 2014 Northwind News article, a comment from Dr. Melnick. He replied that the district has been working on the issue for the past 3 years, that an Albany-based law firm was hired to make sure our voices were heard by the state legislature, and that the district has met with local officials. So my point is, when I was attacked because my date was incorrect, my date was correct when I said that it was known early on. 2013 was not the first time, and in any of those handouts you can see the dates, specifically that Newsday article. And based upon that, those comments, those were known about prior to 2012, okay? So it looks to me more like it was 2000, okay, maybe 2011, 2010, but it definitely wasn't 2013. And there's ample quotes there to support that. The second thing I just wanted to comment on was the glide path issue. We were also emphatically told after I spoke was that $5 million was not a glide path. It was never a glide path. And in that same article, the same article from Newsday, I would like to quote, "We're just asking for something reasonable, a glide path instead of a cliff," Carolyn Mizzou Genovese, school board president of the North Shore School District, said that later that month. And in that same North Winds article, the superintendent continued that the district is trying to work out a glide path that would spread out the tax shift over a number of years. He added that the district has been given $2.5 million to offset the cost of any tax increase to the residents. What I'd like to say is that these comments, along with the other sources referred to in my copies, And what the legislators actually said at the middle school meeting here, it was July, August this year when this whole started, at our rally in November, the radio interviews for Long Island radio stations, and most recently at last week's LAC meeting, they referred to the $5 million as a glide path, which was to be used to soften the tax burden of the LIPA plant decommissioning for all the residents. As you know, well, the tax burden was not softened for the American Water ratepayers in this community. And I just want to restate, because there's still people that don't understand it, the point is that everyone needs to be clear that the American Water ratepayers are shouldering a disproportionate tax burden from this decommissioning. The other utilities were able to pass their increase in taxes to all of Nassau County residents because they serve all of Nassau County residents. Most people probably didn't even notice the small increase in those bills. But for the approximate 4,500 American Water ratepayers in the Seacliff District, we got a bomb dropped on us. American Water's increase in taxes were dumped on a small segment of the population and not able to be spread over Nassau County. And there's no money to help us. So I also would like to correct one other thing that happened in the LAC meeting, which was a very well-run meeting, but one of the questions that came up, which I was actually shocked to hear with regards to American Water, was phrased, I don't remember the exact words before, but it went something like, we've heard that those people that are fighting American Water want the school district to pay their water bills. I don't even know where that idea came from. It is so incredibly bizarre to me. Perhaps it was said in a brainstorming session among people. I certainly had never heard that. When we were talking about that glide path money, we were talking about the tax portion. My bill, along with many others, is 55 to 60, now it's 62% taxes. Okay, so when that tax shift hit us, the small number of American Water ratepayers, that's what we were fighting for in terms of the glide path money. Who would ever think that we would ask for the school district to pay our water bills, our entire water bills? That's absolutely the craziest question I had ever heard. So I just wanted to say that just because our community that has private water by no choice of our own should not be paying more in taxes for that decommissioning of that plant than someone who gets private municipal water. We all receive that tax benefit of that plant, and we should all be sharing in the burden of that tax shift. I just want to end by saying that the only long-term solution, I'm sure most of you are aware, we're in the next phase now, is to press the governor for the state to condemn and force a public takeover. This is not only an American Water problem, it's a district problem too, because this is going to affect enrollment in this district if this isn't solved, and solved once and for all. American Water makes this area very undesirable. It's a cancer. And I hope that the district can understand what we are going through and will support us, however they can support us, to win this battle. Because we're not going to fight until we get public municipal water. And I think it is just a bigger issue than just for the 4,500 people, because it really is going to affect those. The cat's out of the bag now. People know that this is a problem here, and it is the first thing that my realtor friends tell me. There are people coming in and they're asking, what's the water company? I thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Oh.
Hi, I'm Mark Bagdasarian from Glen Head. This has been a very interesting discussion about IB and AP, and I want to thank the board and the school district because I had raised an issue like this at the last meeting I had attended about whether we could offer AB and IP classes. And it looks like for the science classes, where I guess for a year or two it was mainly just IB with an AP sitting, it looks like we're trying to homogenize that and do a combination of IB and AP, as I understand the discussion tonight. The question I have that's come up a little bit here was the approaches of IB and AP have very great benefits for students. And as I understand it, the approach in teaching of both those curriculums are very different. They're both taught at a very high level to students who want to excel. But if it is correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, that IB has one approach to teaching and AP has a different approach. For example, I've heard about the IB from students and from others who have spoke here tonight about being a longer, prolonged approach as opposed to a more in-depth dive for AP. My question is, how do you homogenize those two? And could our students be adversely affected by sitting in a class that are co-seated when you have two programs that are both great but have very different approaches to teaching? That's the kind of one question, then I may have a follow-up.
So the only situation where we do the co-seating is, well, I think biology is a really good example, because I think that was, I don't know if there is yet. So the first year of that course, the first half of the IB course, is identical to the AP course. And that is one of the IB exams that has multiple choice. And the teacher of the course, who is a prolific AP biology teacher, looked at the IB course and was able to organize it in such a way that the first year of IB is identical to AP. So that's essentially AP biology. Those who continue on, it is not more of the same. It's a completely different investigation of biology. And most of the courses are devoted to students doing independent research in human biology. So they do that whole, they do a whole study in their senior year. It goes much deeper, but what they do in that first year is identical. And those are the only courses where they're done, similar with computer science and also with chemistry. So there's only those courses that are like that. And the situation with physics is different, so it's freestanding. But in chemistry, we have a one-year IB, a one-year AP, and the teacher of the course, he is certain that they will be able to perform similarly on both. And so we do track the performance and the data of how they're performing on the assessments. And so we know what their AP score was, their IB score, and their class score. But those are the only situations where we do that. And then world languages, the students are also prepared, but it's just after 2 years. So we always offer AP languages in the senior year. We still offer the AP exam in the senior year in the languages. That just happens to be after 2 years of an IB course. So instead of taking level 4 honors in the language, we take IB year 1, IB year 2, and then you take the AP exam. And that's where we really rely on the expertise of the teachers who taught both to ensure that they would line up in a way that the students would be able to get the 4s and the 5s without having to take any outside preparation from those.
So thank you for that. I thought I heard one of the board members talk about, for example, having separate sections for IB and AP, for example, for biology. But it sounds like, Principal Cousins, what you're telling me is that if I sat in an IB class for that first year and the AP class, both those sections would be taught the same exact way. And the approach, even though it's an IB class the first year, the methodology of teaching would be the same in the IB course or the AP course. And that would go for the, I guess, biology and chemistry of the sciences. Physics is different. And computer science.
Identical. They're doing the same activities they did 5 years ago. With some enhancements, some of it's really identical. Because it's still about quality teaching and assessment. I mean, a strong teacher, we don't look at, there's no prescriptive direction or program of how you must teach an IB course or how you must teach an AP course. It's quality teaching. What's different are the assessments, like what students will be able to produce at the end of that, but there's no prescriptive manner in which that has to be done, other than it attends to all of the values that I listed at the beginning, meaning that, and that's just creating an inquiry, the knowledge base, but there's no prescribed method of teaching. So our teachers who taught the high-level courses before are teaching the high-level courses now in virtually the same way. The assessments are the only thing that.
I guess, do we present the curriculums? I guess, are the curriculums available for the public to review? Okay. And the last question I have was, are there statistics on, because I think one of the board members asked about statistics in Northport on when it was an AP-only class versus a co-seated class, and how students performed, just as an example to see could there be differences and could that affect students? That seems to be a mathematical, statistical thing that we could look at to see if this might be a concern for people. I'm not sure it is, but I'm just trying to gather some information. I don't know if that's possible to look into or not.
We actually have data here too, because that's happening now. So we're able to see how the students in the IB biology class, how they're performing on the AP biology exam. So we're going to have 3 years of data very soon. And similarly in the students in IB History of the Americas, how they perform on the AP US exam. And I also think it's interesting to look even on the Regents exam, just to see what that's like. Because we've actually seen a big increase in our students' Regents exam performance, mostly because of the written component of those exams being weighted so much. And so we do have a lot of the data that I would be more than happy to put the board wanted, I can put that together for us very easily with our school, and then we could appeal to some peer schools to see if they have data.
And the data you're talking about would be AP only classes versus the co-seated classes to compare those? Sure. I would love to see all of it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. James Versacchi from Seacliff. I wanted to thank you for the presentation. That was wonderful about the IB program. I believe the board is voting on that tonight. I thought the balance that the district is providing between IB and AP courses and the balance that you're affording children and their parents to make is wonderful. I know that's been a big concern in the community for a long time, so I would be glad to support you if that's the path that you accepted the recommendation tonight for the 18-19 year, because I think that's what you were looking for comments on. I do worry about the kids who are going to be our plumbers and electricians. We seem to get very focused on the high-end kids and forget about our middle kids. Not saying that this district does it, but it's a concern worldwide, or nationwide, I should say. And I just wanted to thank you all for addressing also the concern that I know with a fourth grader about overscheduling and figuring out what we do with our kids because of the pressures they face. And at least having a district that is keeping that in mind is appreciated by myself and I know many other parents. So I appreciate you keeping that in mind while we also seek to provide the highest level of education for our children, but also making them successful adults and parents and spouses. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Just to be clear, we're not...
And I also wanted to say, I just want to say thank you for the information on the budget and putting that information out early to the community. We all know school budgets are incredibly important, and putting out as much information is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to getting the information on the 8th.
There's a lot more coming February.
Yes, I know.
A whole lot more coming February
Thank you, Tony.
8th.
Appreciate
And
it.
every meeting after that until we
Yes.
accept the budget. But also just to make clear, we're not voting on the AP, IB
okay.
things tonight. This is them
Presenting.
discussing it with us and seeing if we have a consensus to move forward, but it's not really a vote. It's not an official vote.
Got it.
Yeah,
Either
we
way,
don't get to vote on curriculum here.
Thank you.
as a parent, you have our support.
Thank you.
Jerry Romano from Seacliff. I'm just trying to understand the AP IB classes as it relates to the budget, in that you have 38 of those types of classes, right? And how many students participate overall? Because there's overlap where they take both, right?
78%.
Excuse me?
78%.
78%? What's that in how many students? I guess what I'm driving at is like, what's the cost? I've been coming to these meetings now for months, trying to figure out why the North Shore schools are 35% more than the county average. And is this one of the reasons? Is it one of the reasons that, are there 6 kids sitting in a classroom and there should be 22, or whatever the number is? Like, why is there such a big spread? There's $28 million being sucked out of this community, and we're not seeing the results. And like James Versacchi just said, yeah, it's great that you're taking care of the high-end students, but what's happening with all the other students down here that aren't the top performers? Because we're seeing it in the academic scores. This is about academics. You could say the schools are about whatever you want to say they're about, but it's about academics. You have certain requirements that you have to meet based upon what New York State tells you you have to do. All this other stuff you don't have to do. You've heard me say that before, okay? That's a fact. So when you present the budget, we, need to know that every dollar that you're spending is being spent smart. The same way I spend my money. The same way that every dollar, when it leaves my hands, I know where it's going. We need to know that you're spending every one of our dollars in the best, most efficient way, because you're spending too much. You know that. It's not a lie. It's not my opinion. You know, you've heard me say Manhasset and Herrick's turn out better quality students for much, much less money. Do they have 38 IB and AP classes in Manhasset and Herrick's? Do we know?
No, Manhasset doesn't offer IB.
I can't hear you.
Manhasset doesn't offer IB. I don't know about Herrick's.
They don't, but they offer 38 AP classes?
I'm sure they do.
I don't know if they do. If you're sure they do, then that's great. But how are they doing it and doing it for so much less money? What are you doing wrong? That's really what it comes down to. What are you doing wrong?
Mr. Romano, we have a new superintendent who has gone through the budget with a fine-tooth comb. There's a reason.
I can't hear you. You have to speak into the microphone.
We have a new superintendent who is going through the budget with each one of his departments, changing the budget. We are moving in that direction. Okay, we understand you're coming to every meeting, you're saying these, we get it, we hear you, but we're allowing our superintendent to present his new budget. I cannot ask him to answer on what's happened in the past. I'm asking him, we have asked him to present us a budget. He has been through this, through each department. We will see this next week. We've been working with him on this. You know, you come and berate us every week, but we don't. We are going to answer you with our new budget. We are not turning out students that are low rate here. I mean, I take issue with the fact that you think that the Manhasset students and the Herrick students are any better than our students.
They are. That's a fact.
No, that's your opinion.
That's not my opinion. That's a fact. Look at the numbers.
Well, no, but that's if you're basing everything based upon the numbers. I don't base that only on the numbers.
Okay, another question. In the past, the current and former school board members, along with the administration, have manipulated the school board vote and election.
How?
How? They've done it where when I submit a FOIL request, it takes, 20 days to get a response for a FOIL request? Whatever it is. 2 weeks, whatever the amount is. And there are FOILs, by the way, in the office, whoever has them, okay? When the school budget vote is happening, there have been former school board presidents have gone in, submitted a FOIL of who has voted in the community, gotten an immediate response, gotten the list of who hasn't voted, who's voted, they can see who hasn't voted, and then worked down the list and called all the people who would say yes, who would vote yes.
Mr. Romano, it is New York State education law and election law that anyone can walk up to the district clerks and ask for a voter list and who voted that day. It does not have to be foiled.
But they submitted FOILs.
I don't know what you're referring to, but anyone can come up the day of the budget and ask for the list of who has voted. It is not a FOIL.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just make a larger point?
Sure.
Or a different point? So we sit here and I understand everyone has their own style of how they want to question the board. I think it's okay. I think it should be noted that the transparency we offer in sitting here and going through an academic program and then offering everyone the opportunity to come and share their opinion from that podium and tell us what they think about the way we're running the district and the way they feel we're either succeeding or failing speaks to the transparency of this board, that we're willing to be here and that we hear your questions and that we hear what you're saying to us. I think that when that happens, there are times when things that are said from that podium are not correct, such as we're not 35% higher in cost than the average district. We may be 35% higher than some districts, but not the average district in Nassau County. Well, that's a fact. Again, I'm not going to go back and forth. I would simply say we live in a world where a lot of people say things are facts and they're not always facts. But I do appreciate you coming up here, and I'm glad you're saying it, and I think that we are taking what you're saying to heart. I think that there is an understanding on this board that we have to look at these costs. Certainly with New York American Water and where we are as a district, this is something that is important to us, and as Tony said, looking at the way that budget is formed, I think is the time to look and see where we are. That's my point.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Dominic Fortuno. I live in Glen Head. I guess just a few comments and one question, if you don't mind. The going off of some of the things that have been said earlier today, just for anyone who doesn't know, or I guess just for the record, North Shore School District has, for grades 3 through 8, a proficiency rating of 77% in English language arts and 78% in mathematics. That is far above the Nassau County average of 55% in each one of those. It actually, I was surprised to find out, it is higher than Plainview, Old Bethpage, Herricks, Roslyn, Garden City, and Great Neck, and is obviously amongst the highest districts here in New York City. I'm sorry, in New York State. We have our ELA scores have actually gone up 9%. So I'm sorry, our math proficiency has risen 9% since 2015, and our mathematics has, our ELA percentage of proficiency has gone up a staggering 17% in that same amount of time, which is incredible. Most districts have gone at about 3 to 5% in that amount of time. I put I teach statistics. I put a lot in the numbers, and I guess my comment is thank you. We really appreciate all of your hard work. I also am very interested in some of the outcome data that you mentioned before, a little bit about IB and AP. I was wondering if that data will be made available to everyone. Will that be another presentation, or will that be available on the website?
I don't know if my last presentation was put on the website, but at the last presentation, I actually presented how our students did on every single assessment that they took in the year, and then I also did comparison data with all of the schools in the region, including Manhasset, Jericho, Syosset, all of about 11 of them. So you can see how our students performed for 2 years relative to all that. And so if it's not available, I can very easily share that. So you can start there and do that. I really look at every single assessment, every single piece of data that I have available in this number.
Great, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll get it up on the website.
Yeah, we'll get it up on the website.
I'm sorry. That was just a flashback to years ago. I felt a little badly for Jerry. I know he does, he is impassioned, but I hope we don't go back to the way things used to be. As far as the gentleman that just spoke, hi. I understand what you said. We just also, when we're talking about the lower grades, the elementary schools, we do have to keep in mind the opt-out rate that can be up to 40%. So what it does to the validity of those numbers. So maybe it would be that, but maybe it wouldn't. As far as the costs, and when Jerry's talking about, and I'm brought up the getting the courses into the Victorian, and we have a tight budget, and maybe we want to add some courses. I was a little disheartened. I think it was may have been the last meeting that I saw that I believe that the clubs were approved for next year. And we offer a vast array of clubs at a cost. And I was disappointed that we approved that before we decided what we were going to do with our curriculum, and if we needed to add on any classes or maybe even do any other hires. When you take a look at the number of the clubs that we offer, which is staggering, it is I have one child who graduated and I have a junior. Many of these clubs, the kids just go in and sign their names and leave because they're indeed have other they have to go to track or whatever. So many of these clubs are really running with very little activity, although you will see the students' signatures on the papers. And I think that that perhaps would have been an area that we could have looked at and taken monies and spent more wisely. The other question that I have is that the sign-up for the juniors for senior year started a couple of weeks ago, and after Principal Cousins gave his presentation, then I was thinking, oh, okay, so these are the courses now that my junior, who still hasn't signed up, this is what she can also choose from. And now I know that I'm still waiting for a further date, and I'm wondering if, for all those juniors who have already signed up for their senior schedules, if they're going to get an email with an update, even though they may be happy with the coursework that they've chosen for next year, perhaps they'd like to change that. So I hope that an email does go out with an update and that all students will have an opportunity to revisit the guidance counselors. The other thing that I just wanted to ask is, I forget who on the board brought it up, but the concern of preparedness of our faculty for courses that they even might be teaching right now, and now we're talking about co-seating some courses. How are we going to measure this, and who is going to measure it? And how are we going to have confidence that from day one, our teachers are going to be ready to go? And yes, that we will have confidence in that. There are some teachers that are just magnificent with what they do, and there are other departments that perhaps are weaker. And I'm telling you that I don't know how the measuring, if it is taking place before September 1st, and I can tell you that I'm not quite sure how you're measuring the success of these teachers who may not be strong and may need, instead of the opportunity to go for support, maybe it needs to be something that is mandatory. I've spent, along with many of my friends, thousands upon thousands of dollars in tutoring for certain classes. And so if you look at the grades in those classes, maybe you'll say, yeah, this particular faculty member is doing okay. Well, I'm telling you that some faculty members are not doing okay. And in addition to the taxes that I'm paying that I am going to need to move when my youngest graduates, I'm paying thousands upon thousands in tutoring. And I know that the teachers, the courses that I'm paying tutoring for my child, many other parents are paying for, and I know that it's well known in the school which of these teachers need support. And I'm saying it's getting to a point where perhaps all the parents need to get together and submit for reimbursement to the district. I'm begging, I'm really begging that for teachers who need support, that something different needs to be done. We have the teacher leader model now, and maybe in certain departments it's working, and in those departments that it's not working, it's only a fool who continues to do the same thing the same way when it's not working. And we all know where it's not working, so it's foolish to continue to speak to the same professionals and expect a different result. Something different needs to be done in areas that need help. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lisa Cashman from Seacliff. In terms of the district, I have a couple different comments. the district as a whole, when I was looking to move here about 5 years ago and I was assessing the area and it's a very competitive Nassau County in terms of the schools. There was lots of grades of options. And on paper, some of the things about North Shore don't measure up. But when you dig deeper, you realize that significant resources are deployed at every age level to all different styles of learning. Maybe, you have a kid who needs some occupational therapy in kindergarten, like my kid needed, or, maybe in middle school, there's all these IEPs available to our children that are not available if you're in a Roslyn or if you're in a Jericho or if you're in a Syosset. And I can imagine that it's very difficult to assign metrics to that in terms of like the success. And I just can't emphasize enough how important I think it is in Nassau County that we maintain that. And I just want to speak to that and kind of urge that recognition among the board in the context of all these other things that I'm hearing tonight. Because, not everybody learns at an AP or an IB. In fact, apparently my kid has to go to Hogwarts in order to be able to, figure out how to be in high school in a few years. So I have a second grader and I have someone entering pre-K next fall. And what I would love to hear from the board is advice how to bring more developmentally appropriate learning back into the early elementary education. Having experienced this now kindergarten through second grade, I was floored at what was expected from my kindergartner. Of course, the kids delivered, but the struggle. And then now that we're in second grade and it's developmentally appropriate and she's there, it is like a whole different ballgame for her. And there are many, many parents, I think you probably have heard from others, not tonight, who are really wishing, and there's lots of great science to suggest that, let the kids learn through play for as long as possible, they ultimately will do better. So, the clock is ticking for me and my kid entering in the fall, so I would love to hear if that's a possibility for him and what I have to do as a parent to kind of get that movement going in short order. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know if you want to address it now.
Sure, I can. Sure. So as far as the primary schedule is concerned, right? So there are new early learning standards that the state has adopted, and there is a real predominant focus on some of these more developmental skills in play, in exploration. And so over the course of the spring, one of the things that I will talk about with the principals is looking at the schedule. And so in that day, how do we allocate time and then meet this standard? So we have we have ELA targets that we want to meet. We have math targets and a curriculum that we want to meet. We have science and social studies expectations. And then where in there does where does recess fit in, and then at what level does it exist, and can that be extended? Because I agree with you, I think we want to make sure that our little people have those good, strong social skills, in addition to, developing their academic skills as well. So over the spring, there's nothing that, I've had this conversation with several parents, there's nothing, people ask me, what do I need to say or do to get you on top of this? And I am on top of it. We just can't change it's very hard to change a master schedule when it's in play, but we can absolutely have a conversation about how to structure that master schedule in the upcoming year, and we will.
Thank you.
You're
Just
welcome.
a little follow-up comment, which is for my second grader. They deployed at Seacliff School a soft landing for the beginning of the day. It has changed everything. Yeah. Just having that little bit of, play-based learning. There's no tears. She's excited to go. It just is. It might be a maturity thing too, but I don't know. That was a big differentiator for her.
Great.
So,
I'm glad to
thank
hear
you.
That's good to hear.
Hi, Mandy Zapkin from Roslyn Harbor. I just wanted to say, first of all, there's nobody who understands volunteerism as much as I do, and it is very difficult and thankless, and I want to thank the board for giving all their time and effort to our students and our community, number one. And number two, there's no better way to find out how well you're doing, if not for the voice of your alumni. And I have a college freshman who was in the inaugural IB class. And if this meeting was 2 weeks ago, he would have been here himself, but he's here. So he wanted me to tell you, and Ethan, I wish Ethan was still here, that all the hard work that goes into the IB diploma program pays off, and it makes college a breeze. And that's coming from a student who is a special ed student in a selective college. So he wanted me to tell you all that he appreciates the IB program and the hard work that that he was asked to do because of it. He also wanted me to let you know that the Theory of Knowledge course changed his way of learning and way of thinking, and it took, I think it's a 2-semester course, if I'm right. It took him not doing well the first semester to learn how to think, and he says he's applying everything he learned to how he learns in college. He's a science student, and he's using everything he learned in the humanities to get him through. I also want to thank the administration and the teachers for not only teaching the IB program, but helping support and make them successful as well. And it's a pleasure to be in a community that's where the school is progressive and always thinking ahead. And I commend you all, so thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so, all right, let's have one more comment. One more comment, and then we're going to continue our business.
Hi, Dan McDermott, Seacliff. Kind of in between here. I'm going to switch gears, if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, I wanted to actually talk about softball. And why did I want to talk about softball on a 27-degree night? But it's this. I volunteer with North Shore Softball and Seacliff Little League. Registration now open. And one of my roles with the league is about this time every year I have to secure the permits for the fields. And for the girls softball, we work with the school to do so. So I forget if it was last year or the year before, I put in for a permit. We were told we could have the field, but we needed to end our season before the end of June because they were going to redo the fields, the boys and girls fields at the middle school. And I thought, great, the field is really in need of repair. This will be a good thing. Fast forward to last year, as the fields coordinator, I'm getting lots of angry calls from my coaches who coach there saying the fields are unplayable. Every time it rains, not just the day it rains, the next day, maybe even the day after, it's like a pond or a swamp. So fast forward to this week, I decided to check out the fields before I put the permit in. My daughter and I went to the middle school, and she was literally able to skate around the infield because it was so concave and flooded and froze. Not ideal situation. So I have two questions. The first question is, what happened that the fields weren't, that field wasn't done. We went over to the baseball field, and that looks great. The boys' field is in great condition. So there seems to be a bit of a disparity there, and I'm wondering, A, what happened that the girls' field wasn't done, and B, now that you guys are talking budget for the future, what, if anything, are the plans to kind of balance that out?
No idea.
I have no idea, so.
I was just laughing. I'll get back to you with the correct answer tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you for bringing that up.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on with our business to personnel. Action item C. Sure. Can I have a motion? Motion. And I have a second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Yep. Action item D, acceptance of donation to the North Shore Schools from the Athletic Booster Club. Could I have a motion? And can I have a second? Comments?
Yes.
Yes, Joanna.
I'm just wondering why we're talking about a safety issue and having an outside organization pay for that in our gymnasium. It seems like that should have gone through our budget process. I don't know that we should be accepting donations for safety issues in the gymnasium. Wall bedding is wall bedding. If it's our building, we should be providing wall bedding. I'm just making.
Okay.
What I was going to say is that we have accepted donations over the years for any number of items that have been included in clubs and curriculum. Smart boards, activities, rock climbing wall.
This is a safety issue.
Right, but if they see an issue and they want to donate for that, I don't understand why it's problematic.
But I would think also, as a safety issue, it goes through an approval process, doesn't it, Olivia? Yes. Yep.
But the donations go through an approval process. Right.
It's not that they're...
Any donation.
Should not be dependent on a donation.
That's
safety.
Thank you.
Is it a replacement?
We resolve for the kids.
There's padding there already.
There's padding there already. It's replacement with the logo.
So when the assessment of the district, it's a replacement of existing with a different pattern.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
So it's no improvement in the safety, it's just a nicer form of the same degree of safety.
Fancy safety.
Oh,
It's
I like
fancy
nicer.
safety.
I like nicer and donation. So.
Safety is style.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, all in favor? All right, let's move on to the approval to dispose of inventory. It's late. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Can I have a second? Any comments? All in favor? Action item F, approval of special education services. This is the IEPs. And a second?
Second.
Second, questions, comments? All in favor? Action item H, approval of budget transfer. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second?
G.
Did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how I did that. Action item G, approval of standard workday and reporting resolution. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Okay. Action item H, the approval of budget transfer. Could I have a motion? And a second, please.
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor? Okay. We'll skip comments from the public, seeing as we had a long comment from the public. Do we have any old business?
Old business.
Let me run through some. I've got some.
Okay.
I know we did this in the beginning, but I do want to thank the LAC for for bringing forth the legislative night. I'd like to thank Herman for graciously, once again, moderating the night. I would like to address some of the commentary that LAC has gotten from the public about the format. Certainly that will be something that will be reviewed and discussed among the LAC and presented to the board, and the board will have a further discussion on that. And the second thing I wanted to bring up on LAC is I know we had specific projects that we're giving them to do in terms of getting them to do some research. If there are other areas that you would like LAC to handle now that the legislative night is out of the way, any other issues, letters that you would like to write. We haven't done anything about letters on specific issues. I think there are a lot of things going on with with SALT, with the federal tax plan, with, the change in the deductibility of your real estate taxes. So if there are any issues that you would like the LAC to do, I think we have to be very specific in the direction that we give LAC in what we want them to do in order for them to work effectively. We have many very bright and capable people on that subcommittee, and we should optimize the talent that we have.
Thank you. Sarah?
Water is always, I'm sorry, this is on, popular topic. So for those who may not know, We have filed legal proceedings to join the Village of Seacliff suit against American Water to protect taxpayer dollars and taxpayer interest. We do not yet know if we are going to be able to join that motion. But I think our lawyers put out a number of interesting arguments on this point that hopefully will be heard one way or the other. Briefly, I'll mention that the year where our opt-outs from the standardized testing, grades 3 through 8, first bumped up, that's the year Dr. Melnick was able to give us the data on which kids appeared to be opting out. And so we know in that instance that most of the opt-outs actually came from kids that were scoring at the high end on the 3s and 4s. Since then, we don't have any good way of knowing. And we already referenced the, at best, meagerness of state aid runs, but in the information that we got on that, I wanted to point out that there also seemed to be a massive caveat, that referred to changes in federal funding, such that it might be sort of like, here's your state aid unless other bad things happen, and then what? We're not really going to give it to you? We're going to take it back? I mean, there were huge caveats in the document that we got.
From the governor.
From the governor.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that I'm not necessarily worried about the level going down. It never has. So I think that might be the governor trying to use it as a leverage point for school districts. But we will keep a really close eye on it. I have a meeting set up with Senator Marcelino in another week or so. I'll have that conversation with him and find out, where he thinks this is going. He's the chair of the Education Committee for the Senate, so he'll have good information for me. I don't think there's a clear answer to what you're asking, other than if in the scary event that the state aid levels decreased, it would be potentially devastating to us.
Right.
Even though we're not highly dependent on it, it's still a
Nonetheless,
big
you still
number.
need it. It was
Right.
basically like, here's the state aid run,
Right.
but it had various triggers in it. Unless there's a $450 billion cut in Medicaid, in that case, the deal's off.
Right.
And those,
Exactly.
That's sort of a
Exactly. So some of that might be
proposition.
exactly, and some of that might be leverage points the governor's using to move other priorities forward. So I don't know.
I have some other questions for Senator Marcelino when you meet with him.
Great.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Marion, thank you for mentioning LAC. I think also it shouldn't be overstated. Deb McDermott individually did quite a bit of work to put that together and to
Absolutely.
promote the event, so I just wanted to thank her as well. It's a late night. I'm not going to bring it up, but one thing I did want to bring up in old business was we had the enrollment report that we got last year done by Ross Haber. We saw the enrollment numbers for this year that seemed to be higher than we expected. We asked for a new enrollment report. I did a deep dive, which I am not going to go into tonight, other than to say their projections from last year are already halved, and potentially, instead of looking at a continuing decrease, there's a lot of data in the new report that says we've emerging from a trough and we're going to start growing. So I'd like to request that gets added to a future agenda so we can spend some time on it.
We did request
As well as
it.
a third floor to the Seacliff School, based
We-
on those projections.
We did request it, so we should discuss it at a meeting
Great.
coming up. But we'll work on getting it on the agenda.
Thank you.
It was
Would it-
something we had requested. Huh?
Me?
No, we had requested, no, not from you, the Ross Haber, the redo.
Right,
Just for
right,
us
right.
to
Yes,
discuss it as a
absolutely.
group. We haven't done that, so we got to get it on an agenda so we can discuss it.
Great. What I was thinking might be helpful is to take that, to build that into the enrollment part of our budget discussion as well.
Okay.
So we can take a look at that in the context of what those enrollment projections mean for the current and for future budgets.
That's great, as long as there's an opportunity to really give the board a chance to look at the old and the new, and then
Discuss it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because I had concerns about that study when we first did it last year. I have serious concerns now about the information it's giving us, especially because it does become fodder for misperceptions in the community. I think we need to make sure are remedied.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. New business.
Couple of things.
Oh, boy. What do you got?
What? They're short.
All right, what do you got? What do you got?
I wanted to make sure that everybody had seen the data breach on the
I did see
aforementioned state testing. Personally identifiable information on not necessarily but on 3rd through 8th graders has been hacked out of the state system, and that's disturbing. At the moment, they're saying only 38 kids on Long Island had their data stolen from the system, which is sort of how all data breach stories start. Like it was only
Sure.
this many, and then it turns out it's far more. So I really do think we should keep an eye on that because that's troubling. The other thing is we all got the information from the state controller on the fiscal stress scores. Fantastic. We had a perfect score. And the environmental stress data, which was also very, very good. Thank you, Olivia. And so I didn't know if we want to discuss that more fully at some point, and in particular, I thought the environmental stress thing was interesting in that we, I don't know, lost or got a few points, depending on how you see it, based on a change in the full property value for the district. And so I'm looking at that and I'm going, this seems odd. I don't think property values went down, but it's not about our home values. It's about, I assume, Nassau County continuing to take properties off the roll in our district altogether, or am I wrong? Do we know what causes that? Because it'd be ironic for the county to be the cause of our only stress.
I don't know whether that data is current.
It's not. It only went from a change from like 15 to 16 and further that is not current.
Because when we had the recession, most of the assessed values went down in the
But
district.
it doesn't go that far back. Like if you look at the trends on assessed values for the period it is looking at, the property values are going up, and yet for this report, the total value is coming down. And the only thing I can come up with is the county removing properties from the tax roll.
And it took a long time for home values to come up to the level that they are. So that affects the equalization rate. And if it affects the equalization rate, and that it also affects the full market values of homes. So it's building, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, so this data from the controller looked from like 16 maybe back to like 2013, and the trough and the bottom of the home values in the area was in 2012. So it's measuring a point in which it should all be rising, but it's not. The data on this is like all over the place.
I think you have a strong point there, because this is exactly what happened to us today, because it looks like Nassau County is not updating their data on time. And in fact, today, because of an advocacy that one of the business officials did, the state had to go back and change the growth factor. So after we've gotten all those data, which is published for all the 700 school districts in the state, they went back to change Nassau County alone because Nassau County Assessor's Office has not been on top of that data. And so maybe that's one of the reasons why the full value is also going down.
Yeah.
There was a change in the Nassau County assessment system because they used to do this crazy like 1930s assessment, and then they went to the full value of the home for the assessment process. And when they did that, many of the homes the values were overinflated. There's tax grievances and any number of tax grievances that have been granted could affect the number, and we all know that process can take a couple of years for that grievance to go through and be applied.
Those between properties more than bring down the value of all the property in our district.
It would if you had a large number of tax grievances that had a downward assessment.
Could you just ask him to dismiss for one for
We could.
I think the best way to look at it is to find the data for all other school districts and see whether they have a similar trend. then it's
Right,
Nassau
and it's
County.
disturbing to think that this whole thing is based on just old, bad data from the county to start with. It's the other possibility.
Very possible.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
You didn't see if anybody else had any business.
Does anybody else have any new business? I'm exhausted, I'm sorry. No? Motion to adjourn.
I'll give you
Thank-
$5 to have new business. It's my new business.